good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The passage of time will now bring you to something strange, unique, and idiosyncratic. Have a good time.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, friends, and welcome yet again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. Today we return, albeit briefly, to Midworld for 2012's The Wind Through the Keyhole. This is both a prequel and something of a bridge novel for the Dark Tower series in that it takes place between Wizard and Glass and the Wolves of the Kala, before taking us back into Roland's past and then even further into an old fairy tale from Roland's youth, from a little book called The Magic Tales of the Eld. Joining me, the shimi of this quartet, are my gunslinging friends and hosts of our Dark Tower Detour Patreon series, Cathbert and Flelane. Dan Caffrey, say hello and tell me about the first time you read Wind Through the Keyhole.
This is Dan Cathbert. Caffrey. My nickname is decided for me. First time I read Wind Through the Keyhole was right when it came out. With holding this first edition. I guess the Dark Tower books, it's not technically the first edition because the first edition is always like the Cemetery Dance one, but first trade edition that I believe I got from my brother-in-law, mine and Flieger's friend Mike Belletta for, I don't know, what month did this come out?
I believe it was early 2012.
February.
Maybe it was
right about my birthday, February 21st.
I missed Flieger's 40th birthday. I'm sorry. We were just talking about that. I forgot to call him or text him, and I feel bad.
I'm happy you're here with me now.
I thought you turned 21.
Oh, forever.
It might act like it, right? No, yeah, well, I was gonna say I must have gotten it maybe I got it for my birthday and read it a few months after it came out. But yeah, I loved it then and loved it now. I was a little skeptical when it came about revisiting that universe, especially through today's lens, right? It's like everything gets a revisitation or a remake or a reboot or a sequel, etc. And I was really worried that Stephen King was going to go down a rabbit hole of just continuing to explore the Dark Tower universe. And he has to an extent, but I feel like he's kept it very tempered. I really love the way that he's revisited in the years since, and that he hasn't gone and written an entire other series. So this was like a real breath of fresh air because I feel like it very much does stand on its own merit while still being very rewarding for people who have read it. So yeah, it was really fun to dive back into this, especially considering some of the novels he's written since then.
Little dig right there.
Little dig. So, wait, dig at what? No, I didn't mean it. I wasn't saying. No, I didn't at all mean like. Oh yeah, like those shitty books he's written.
Do you wish Holly Gibney was in Wind Through the Keyhole?
No, I don't.
Helping them solve the Skin Man mystery.
The Wind Through the fart hole or poopy hole.
The poopy hole.
Her solving her and Roland solving the mystery together of the Skin Man. No, I mean just in terms of how Stephen King, I think in his later career, and we've talked about this with Buick 8 and some of the other novels we've covered, he's gotten really interested in narrative as a framing device and what does it mean to tell a story and how deep can we go? How can we use storytelling as an actual character, as an actual device, like the literal act of people sitting around and telling a story. That's all I meant. I didn't mean this is better than fairy tale. Although it is better than fairy tale. I think it does some of what fairy tale's trying to do a little bit better than fairy tale. We'll just say that.
Okay. Flelane, say hello. Happy birthday.
Thanks. This is Dan Longstick Flieger. It's Diddlestick, Longstick. The nuns had
both work.
Yeah. I wrote down Longstick, but I think it's Diddlestick. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I wrote down both, actually. I'm reading my notes now. So I also have the first edition.
Nice.
Obviously, I finished the Dark Tower before this came out. So I was like, the day it came out, I got this book.
Yeah. And were you a fan when you first read it?
I was. I actually think this is a underrated. I would rank it above some of the Dark Tower books.
Yeah.
I would too. Yeah.
I want to talk about that when we get to our final thoughts. Yeah, I also got this right when it came out. It was I remember being like you, Caffrey. I think I was a little bit wary of it. Like I was just nervous that I guess like I just felt like I had personally had closed the book on the Dark Tower, and so I was like, I don't know if I really want to go back to that world. And then I was so glad I did when I read it. It's such like there's a confidence to it, there's a breeziness to it, and it actually genuinely just that first stretch like where we're back with Roland and everyone, it feels like genuinely really great to read those sections and feel, I guess, like especially since this takes place between the fourth and the fifth book, like going back to that era, that was my like Wizard and Glass is one of my favorite Stephen King books of all time. So I think going back to that era in general was really delightful for me. Like before they went to Mages or whatever, or not Mages, wherever the Calla is, that era,
Do you guys
Thunderclap and all that.
It's funny because I remember when this came out, it felt like it was so soon after the seventh book, but it was 8 years. For some reason, it feels like, no, Stephen, it hasn't been long enough. I wonder why that is. I guess Dark Tower just has long lasting reputation.
Well, also time is as weird as we get older. Like, do you ever guys like? I remember thinking that a million years passed between like Weezer's Pinkerton and the Green Album.
I think about that
like,
all the time.
It was like 4 years.
Yeah, it was such a big deal. Now it's like, oh, so and so hasn't put out an album in a decade.
Capri and I bought Green Album, I think, with you at Circuit City. They used to have a thing on like Tuesdays where it was like $9.99, but I got Tool, Lateralis, and Green Album.
Same, yeah. It was
what a portrait of an era.
Not long afterwards, I'll cop to it. I also got Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park.
I remember making fun of you for that. Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have made fun of you because I was blasting that every day in the gym as I was lifting iron, and that's not even a joke.
Crawling through my skin or
run away.
Hey, look, I'll go the deep cuts. What's the one? It's like
everything
place of
to me, something like that.
One step closer, crawling in my skin. What's the one that's like? It's like no. It's like I'll think of it. It's like a really rap-driven track. It's
the
like
rap-driven one. I know what you're talking about. It's track 9. I don't remember what it's
called.
Is it
a place of my own, a place in the sun, a place to call my own, something like that? No, a place in the sun.
Is that where Mike showed off his rap skills?
Shinoda.
Wait, a place for my head. That's what it was.
Place for my head. Oh my god.
Place for my head. In the end, of course. In the end was funny because when I got the album, it was not a single yet, and now I feel like that's the most enduring song from that record, right?
I don't know. Piano. I think One Step Closer is always going to be. Oh wait, no. I guess you're right. The piano one is. I feel like the end, persisted more.
Yeah.
Man, I got to be honest. I did not think we were going to talk about Linkin Park like 5 minutes into our Wind Through the Keyhole.
Hey, this
episode.
is the new metal boys here. This is the new metal gang. Yeah,
fully in support of it. Hopefully, we can circle back to our thoughts on Linkin Park in a little place called the Derry Public Library.
Mike Hanlon, if you see...
Excuse me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
Tell Mike Hanlon that I had to go, that I had to get cleaned up. Tell him I'll see him tonight.
Get out! Last chance, Toja. Get out!
Here in the Derry Public Library, we break down the history. We talk about a lot of the context that goes into the book before we talk about the book itself. There's not too much about this book. Even our archivist and historian, Bryant Burnett, thank you for all you do, Bryant. Even he was like, really not much out there on this one. So the only stuff I could really find of King talking about it was in a publication called USA Weekend back in March of 2009 is when he first mentioned this story. And what he said was that he had recently he was promoting Under the Dome. So it was around that time. So he said he had recently had an idea for a short story. And then here's the quote. And then I thought, well, why don't I find 3 more like this and do a book that would be almost like a modern fairy tales? Then this thing started to add on bits and pieces, so I guess it will be a novel. That idea, according to King, is for a new Dark Tower novel, a continuation of his epic 7-part fantasy sci-fi western series about blah, blah, blah. It's not really done yet, King admits of his magnum opus. Those 7 books are really sections of one long Uber novel. And in that same interview, I find this interesting. he says, well, the article says he rewrote the first Dark Tower novel in 2003 and also wants to go back and revise the other ones to put the whole work in focus, which is something we talked about in our Dark Tower episodes. So King says, in essence, what I put out there for sale was a first draft. People wanted the story, King explains. The story was happening over a long period of time, and when it got to the last 3 books, I just said, I've got to sit down and write these as one thing, which is basically what I did. For a year and a half, I didn't do anything but write Dark Tower books, which is why when some lady called for an interview from the Los Angeles Times, I said, I'm probably going to retire. At that point, I felt like retiring. I was so tired of that constant fantasy world. And I feel like this is such like a naked, straightforward articulation of what I think we were extrapolating from the afterword in those episodes, where he sounds exhausted with the world, right? And I think that's one of the complaints of those latter Dark Tower books is they can feel a little bit rushed. And I think, and we talked so much and especially in the last Dark Tower episode, just about the the bitterness that seemed to persist in some of the like afterward and the kind of like, you know, King speaking to the reader moments of that book. And but then also how, you know, he was recovering from his accident. He was obsessed with death. He was like, I need to finish these books. So him describing them as first drafts is really interesting to me, and musing over that notion of, should I rewrite these books? And obviously he's never done it, but you know, he talks about I remember us talking about, there was one interview I think with Neil Gaiman where Neil Gaiman was like, King told me he wants to write himself out of the Dark Tower series, and that's the only time I've seen that sentiment expressed. But those kind of things are super interesting to me. So I don't know, what do you guys think about this idea of wanting those last books being first drafts and him wanting to rewrite it?
I don't know if I have anything to say necessarily about the first draft angle of it, but there is a sense here of, I feel like King has freed himself because he's finished it, right? And the writing, just the prose, is so much more who used the word confident? Was that you, Randall?
Yes,
I think
it was me.
It was me. It was mine. There is just a confidence to the prose here and a breeziness, and I don't think he thoroughly outlined this book or anything, but it just feels like it knows where it's going in a way that sometimes the latter day Dark Tower books don't. And look, I've said my favorite Dark Tower book is the 7th one. I maintain that. Love the ending, love where it goes, but you can feel him laboring over, what do I do with this big machine that I've created? And you don't have that here. Now, granted, some of that is baked into the format. It is a one-off that takes place in between 2 books. It's almost like taking the easiest parts of Wizard and Glass and just working with that. So I think just narratively, it was always going to be easier than a 7-volume epic, but you can just feel the weight lifted from his shoulders here because he did the thing. He finished it.
He doesn't have to worry about necessarily the Tower or Crimson King or any of these. He's like, this is like a Law and Order episode that is set within the Dark Tower world. You know?
Well, and it almost feels like he's getting to just have fun in this world. Yeah. Because he very much is alluding to events from other novels. He has the core characters in there, but it's almost like he doesn't have to worry about the logistics or the planning of anything. He's just getting to create this still very vividly colored world that he's created over 7 books, and just kind of let his characters loose and get to have some fun. So I think that's part. I don't think this would have felt like that had he not finished the other series at this point.
Yeah. What do you think, Flieger?
It definitely adds to it. It's not necessary, but I love that he did it. And I know Caffrey's a fan of like George R. R. Martin, you know, Game of Thrones books.
We'll see if he can actually. My fandom is
but that's what I love about King is like he's not afraid to revisit. And I've read the Duncan Eggs, like the prequels to Game of Thrones, but I like that he was willing to revisit this, and I like that even in the forward, he's like, or the afterward, one of them. I listened to audio and book combined, but he's like, this would be book 4.5.
Yeah,
and I think it's cool that he was willing to revisit such an epic series where, you know, he completed it. And he probably was like, I have to race to get book 7 of Dark Tower. But now that he's done it and he's had a little comfort, I like that he's willing to go back and revisit. I think this is not the last Dark Tower book. I've held that theory for a while. But I think this is, it fleshes out a lot of details that are not necessary for the main story, but they make it that much better.
Yeah.
And I like that he, was it Jamie, instead of Alan and Cuthbert, it's this different personality that Roland's going to be around, and it gives you a different sense of who he is just by how he relates to Jamie, and you see his strengths and his flaws in this book.
I
Yeah,
think too,
which
with
is something I
Jamie,
really want to talk about more. Yeah,
because he's not part of the core quartet at that time, and there that lets Roland be a little bit looser too. There's not all this baked in bitterness and resentment. Do you guys think? I mean, to Randall's question about the first draft question, do you think if he were to go back and rewrite the Dark Tower books, it would be more in this style? I guess, just in terms of the writing. I mean, it's like impossible to answer.
what do you mean? What do you mean style?
I don't know. There's a I guess it is similar to most of the series, but if I think of Song of Susanna, for instance, it just gets so caught up in metaphysics almost,
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas with this, there's definitely fantastical elements throughout, but he isn't worried about it over explaining it too much. Like, I guess maybe the more specific question is if he was going to go back and rewrite the Dark Tower books or some of the Dark Tower books after working on this one, do you think it would have more of a sense of speed and leanness to it than what we did get in the back half?
I think it's a learned hand, not just the Supreme Court justice, which actually was named Learned Hand, but this is
really?
there's what a weird name to have, but this is a mature king, and he could pop into his friend's world and write this little, it's only like 230 pages, right? It's a very quick read.
It's short, yeah.
But it's a fun adventure that I think is good. And I don't know that as he was a young man trying to write this epic, to match like Tolkien or these, I think he's already achieved this. So now this is a mature person who's very well established as a good, quick writer, just popping in and have some fun. And going back to the original question, like I'm happy the original books are written when they were. He's gone back and changed bits of them, but I'd rather him do a book like this where it's like, let's just add to the lore and
do something new.
Yeah. And it's this book is it, and we'll talk about it in the episode, but like it reads so quick, it's so fun, it's so engaging. And especially after we did so many 1122 Under the Dome, these epic novels, that it's kind of refreshing just to have a short, 100% read.
It's always a nice palate cleanser when we're bopping between like the Doomakis and the 1122s and the epics, like to always have these little palate cleansers. Yeah. And this is kind of the month for them because we're doing Joyland as well. And so, this is like a good era for palate cleansing King. Do you guys remember in 2009? I remember this. King posted a poll on his website asking visitors to vote for which novel he would write next. And it was announced, but Wind Through the Keyhole was on there, and Dr. Sleep was on there. And basically it was like, do you want me to write another Dark Tower book, or do you want me to write a sequel to The Shining? I remember this, like him asking that. Yeah. And if you guys voted at the time, what would you have voted for?
I think I did vote at the time, and I'm pretty sure I voted for The Shining, which no comment on that for the book we ended up getting. But yeah, I'm almost certain, because that was a pretty highly publicized poll, because those are such both big works. It wasn't like, oh, hey, do you guys want a sequel to Roadwork, or do you want a new short story collection, right? These are two of his most iconic works he was posing this question to, so I voted for The Shining. But
I was mostly on Something Awful forums at that time, so
rotten.com,
rotten.com. No, but I'd never heard that, Randall. I didn't see that poll at the time, but you're right that those are, I mean, Shining is epic, iconic. Everyone knows it, but also Dark Tower is great. So he's tossing chum in the water for his fans there.
I think I might have also voted for the Shining sequel. Like I said, I was a little bit wary about going back to the Dark Tower world, which I think maybe a lot of people were, especially since, some people weren't thrilled with the ending. I never really had a huge problem with the ending. But I did feel like I was done. And so, and it's funny how it shook out, where Dr. Sleep was, I think something of a disappointment. I do think there's a lot of good stuff in it, but whereas this book is sort of, and a lot of critics agree, was something of like a little gem, And speaking of the reviews, I want to hit those really quick. I only have a couple here. It wasn't widely reviewed, but The Guardian called it a gem of a novel, enchanting and enchanted. They wrote, "Wind blows, whistling and magical, through each of Roland's tales, from the ice of the Stark Blast to the desert wind of the shapeshifter's crumbling hometown, and the night wind of Tim's woods, which slip its strange breath over the cottage, sweet with the scent of blossy wood at the edge of the endless forest, and faintly sour but still pleasant with the smell of the ironwood trees deeper in, where only brave men dared to go." King is utterly at home in Midworld, and the cadences and rhythms of the vernacular he has created provide a language fitting for the stories and legends he recounts. King has proven that he does long well. 11/22/63 was a sprawling but unput-downable marathon to save JFK from assassination. Under the Dome is a claustrophobic vintage piece of horror, but when the author reins himself in and keeps it short, he's even better. And AV Club, this is a funny review. I'll talk more about it in a second. But here's what they say about Wind Through the Keyhole specifically in an A- review. They wrote, "It seemed like the worst idea imaginable, an attempt to wring more blood from a stone that was squeezed dry sometime in the late 90s. Stranger still was the news that the latest book, The Wind Through the Keyhole, wouldn't be a sequel, but would fit between the fourth volume and the fifth. Late-breaking mid-series interpolations are almost always a mistake, given that they tend to focus on details that were deemed unnecessary enough to be excluded from the original source material. Trying to tell an interesting, exciting story while hitting all the marks to maintain continuity with the pre-existing work leads to a lot of box-checking and listless plotting. The Wind Through the Keyhole isn't a prequel or a sequel exactly, but it threatened to combine the worst possibilities of both. Thankfully, Wind delivers something less and more than expected. This new entry doesn't require much digging to yield its treasures. The writing is clean and well edited, with little of the meandering that marred the series' weakest books. There's a purity to the story within a story structure. And by the time a much younger past version of Roland gets around to telling a frightened boy his own favorite childhood tale, King is doing what he does best, spinning a yarn full of deep feeling and unexpected delights. Where other books of the Dark Tower sequence got bogged down by a vain effort to make sense of it all, Wind Through the Keyhole has a light, easy touch, buoyed by the knowledge that all of the machinations of plot and Ka, the gunslinger's word for fate, a pretty way of saying this happens because the writer needed it so, which is something we talked about.
Little dig too, yeah.
Have been laid to rest. The adventures of the fairy tale boy, Tim Stoutheart, are as purely enjoyable and free as anything King has done, and without the obligations of towers and orbs and everything else. The book finds a way back to the true source of the Dark Tower book's lingering power, and the attraction that delighted readers and author alike for so long. Horror, courage, and wonder reaching straight up to the sky. Which I think is a lovely summation. But what's so funny about this AV Club review is that like the author just keeps getting distracted by complaining about the original Dark Tower series. And I kept like reading it and being like he'll say something about Wind Through the Keyhole, and then suddenly we get like 300 words about why Song of Susanna sucks or something. And I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with those criticisms, but also it almost feels a little pat now to rag on Dark Tower. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we all know it's too long. He's searching for an ending, but I fucking love the Dark Tower too. So it's like, ease up on the King.
Yeah. It's funny.
I was gonna say like the criticism too of like, it delivers something less and more than expected. To me, that's like a placeholder. Like, you could say that for any novel.
Sure.
So I didn't read the I don't know, diatribes about the rest of the Dark Tower series in the review. But I don't know. I like that generally it seems like the criticisms are generally positive toward this, addition to the Dark Tower series.
Yeah. But like but so I just want to read like this section which comes in the middle of the Wind Through the Keyhole review. As a long-form narrative, the Dark Tower novels were doomed from the start. It's easy to look to later volumes as the tipping point, whether it's the controversial 400-page plus cul-de-sac of Wizard and Glass, the leaden random mythology of Wolves of the Calla, or the way each successive book seems a little less solid and a little more desperate than the one before. But the seeds of the series' downfall were present at the beginning in The Gunslinger, which was full of pop philosophy pretensions. This was never a truly coherent work, and with its melange of iconography and on-the-fly surrealism, there was never any chance it would all come together in a completely satisfying conclusion. The Dark Tower Roland seeks is called the nexus of all possible worlds, and that's a big concept to fit into the framework of a loopy genre base-jumping Western about knights with guns, killer lobsters, and giant robot bears. King has often said he writes more by intuition than strict planning, and while this has served him well elsewhere, much of the Dark Tower series is marred by tossed-off ideas which can't ever be made to reconcile. And the thing is, I actually agree with almost everything he says, but I also am like, lighten up.
Well, also too, I mean, two things. First off, is Wizard and Glass controversial? I feel like that's
Well,
was kind of widely
some people
loved.
don't. I think it is by like King heads at least, but a lot of people I think just don't like it because it deviates from, they waited so long for the
True.
follow up to the Wasteland, and then you get a little bit of that follow up, like you get the resolution of Blaine, but you don't
It doesn't move the story,
time.
the quest forward very.
I
very
personally,
much, yeah.
that's
I love
like I
that,
said,
though.
Wizard and Glass is sometimes my
I mean,
favorite King book. So yeah,
I agree with I too agree with the criticisms, but also those King's lack of planning, those weird ideas, the genre meshing, all of that. That's what makes the series so unique. I mean, that's what makes it different than something like Lord of the Rings. Like, yeah, J.R.R. Tolkien loved Lord of the Rings, but he planned it out to a T and actually did write it like what he wrote it as one book. But I mean, I love how coked out the Dark Tower series is. I don't mean literally like, I mean, he was doing cocaine for some of that, but I love how just it can kind of go this way and this way and this way. And yeah, every now and then you might get something like the convoluted mythology of Mia and Song of Susanna, which we all had issues with. But then also you get Shardik, which I love.
which is awesome.
You get someone like Dandelo in the final book. I mean, I love the kind of weird psychedelic trip that the Dark Tower is on. That's what makes me love it. So I can't criticize all that too much, because otherwise that's also what makes it great.
Yeah.
I also think I disagree with the criticism of like it kind of like meanders on. I actually think it builds at 2, 3, 4, 5 are like, to me, that's the peak.
Same, yeah.
So the book that we're reading now, the fact that it's snuggled between those, I'm like, no, I love it. That's the
Sweet
marrow
spot
that I want to suck from. Yeah, exactly. Like this is my sweet spot. I want right around there. And yeah, Wizard and Glass, we've talked about this before, but that's my favorite. And I like Wolves of the Calla a lot. I think it starts going downhill at that point.
Yeah.
So having a book like this that, sneaks between those two, I love it. I think it's great.
What would have been funny? Say he came out with Wind Through the Keyhole in the story order, like it came out after Wizard and Glass, and then fans are like, "Oh my god, we're getting another thing."
People
just
would be
them sitting
so
around,
fucking mad. Yeah,
we're just sitting around telling another off story. That would have been kind of funny.
Yeah, I agree. I just thought that stuff was interesting, and I think it does, speak to the complex relationship people have with this franchise, like where it's hard to talk about something like Wind Through the Keyhole, which really is in many ways like a standalone kind of thing. But it's still, and I see us struggling too, to not talk about it within the larger context, or like start to relitigate some of our struggles with the full Dark Tower series, because it is. And this is something that we talked about a lot in our episode, in the final one. And because nobody is more aware of how imperfect the series is than King. You know what I mean? I think that he really understands. And this is why I'm interested by him saying they're first drafts, that he wants to rewrite them, because I think he really understands that he didn't quite nail it. I don't get me wrong. I think it's good. Like, and I like the last book a lot, but there are glaring flaws throughout it, and that makes it in some ways more interesting to me. And I think that's kind of what you were getting at, Dan.
What's the Jackson Browne lyric from These Days? It's "Don't confront me with my failures. I had not forgotten them."
Oh yeah,
is that Nico from Velvet Underground?
yeah. What's a Jackson Browne song?
Did he write it?
No, he wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I thought you were just kidding.
These Days.
Yeah. I don't know who Jackson Browne. I think that's on For Every Man, which is his second album. I don't know if that came out before
the Velvet Underground. The Andy Warhol one is.
Yeah. Let's see.
These Days is on that, I believe. No, actually, These Days is not on that.
No, it's not. Yeah, These Days. I think is These Days even. I don't think it's Velvet Underground. I think it's just Nico, right?
But
yeah, I think it's just Nico. I
think Wes Anderson wrote it. Yeah.
So okay, wait. So Nico, wow, she performed it on her 1967 album Chelsea Girl. So her version predates Jackson Browne's by 6 years. But hey, he wrote it, so he gets to have the final
I actually
say.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I like both.
Yeah, I didn't know Jackson Browne wrote that. That's the more you know.
This is the third episode in a row where somebody's brought up Jackson Brown, and
I
I'm
think
not.
I
Really?
brought him up. I think I brought him up all 3 times. I don't know.
Well,
no,
King brought him up. King brought him up in the EW episode.
I didn't know. Oh,
and then
did he?
you brought him up during. Well, we discussed him, and then you brought him up during the Secret Window commentary.
I brought him up on Secret Window because we were talking about the artist Renee Magritte. And Jackson Brown's I'm Late for the Sky is a riff on the album cover is a riff on Magritte's painting. But no, it's funny. I feel like I brought up Jackson Brown on our Stand episode because he has a song called The Fuse that just reminds me of The Stand, just the vibe of it. And back when I was editing the episodes and not paying any attention to copyright laws, I remember I did the outro of our Stand episode with that song, which I'm sure is not that anymore because we'd get in trouble. But yeah, I associate.
He ain't gonna sue
Jackson.
us.
Yeah, no, he's not, but his fucking label or something might. But I associate Jackson Brown with King very much. I mean, they came up at the same era; they're very much the same age. Yeah, I associate like my dad listening to Jackson Brown and reading Stephen King, so they'll always be forever tied to me. But yeah, great.
The outro of this
songwriter.
episode should be the boom, 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 or I'm fucking it up. The Linkin Park song.
And then we came back around to it. Right? Yeah.
No, that's a Nico song.
Oh, Nico wrote it, and then yeah,
Everything you say to me.
Everything you say to me. It goes like that, right? Yeah.
yes. Okay, let's. I'm going to read the synopsis, and then we're going to talk about the hook. Although it is officially the 8th book in the Dark Tower saga, Stephen King likes to call the Wind Through the Keyhole book 4.5 of the series, since it takes place after Artet escapes the Green Palace at the end of Wizard and Glass and before they reach Calibrin Sturgis, setting for Wolves of the Calla. The Wind Through the Keyhole is a story within a story within a story. At the outset, Roland and his American Tet are traveling toward the River Wye in Midworld. A great storm called a Stark Blast is about to blow. While Artet is sheltering from the storm, Roland tells a story about his younger days when he and his Tet-mate, Jamie DeCurry, were sent to Deberia to investigate reports of a skin man, a kind of dangerous shape changer. While trying to comfort a young boy named Spill Streeter, the only survivor of a particularly brutal attack by the Skin Man and Roland's only witness to the crime, Roland recounts yet another story. This time it is a sinister fairy tale drawn from the book Magic Tales of Eld. The 3 stories are woven together by the freezing, howling winds of the Stark Blast. And I think it's worth it actually to read a little bit of King's intro. Many of the people holding this book have followed the adventures of Roland and his band, his quartet, for years, some of them from the very beginning. Others, and I hope there are many newcomers and constant readers alike, may ask, can I read and enjoy this story if I haven't read the Dark Tower books? My answer is yes, if you keep a few things in mind. First, Midworld lies next to our world, and there are many overlaps. In some places, there are doorways between the 2 worlds, and sometimes there are thin places, porous places, where the 2 worlds actually mingle. 3 of Roland's quartet, Eddie, Susanna, and Jake, have been drawn separately from troubled lives in New York into Roland's mid-world quest. Their 4th traveling companion, a Billy Bumbler named Oi, is a golden-eyed creature native to Midworld. Midworld is very old and falling to ruin, filled with monsters and untrustworthy magic. Second, Roland Deschain of Gilead is a gunslinger, one of a small band that tries to keep order in an increasingly lawless world. If you think of the gunslingers of Gilead as a strange combination of knights errant and territorial marshals in the Old West, you'll be close to the mark. Most of them, although not all, are descended from a line of the Old White King, known as Arthur Eld. I told you there were overlaps. Third, Roland has lived his life under a terrible curse. He killed his mother, who was having an affair, mostly against her will, and certainly against her better judgment, with a fellow you will meet in these pages. Although it was by mistake, he holds himself accountable, and the unhappy Gabrielle Deschain's death has haunted him since his young manhood. These events are fully narrated in the Dark Tower cycle, but for our purposes here, I think it's all you have to know. For longtime readers, this book should be shelved between Wizard and Glass and Wolves of the Calla, which makes it, I suppose, Dark Tower 4.5. As for me, I was delighted to discover my old friends had a little more to say. It was a great gift to find them again, years after I thought their stories were told. I love how simple and straightforward that is, and it is kind of cool to hear Roland sort of summarize the given circumstances and like how he sort of streamlines it and his own mythology that I think he's created. And he actually teases something that I want to talk about a little bit later. I don't know if you guys caught it, but I'm going to bring it up again later unless you want to guess what you think I'm referring to.
Wait, something
His
just
old
now?
friends?
What?
I said his old friends. Is that what you're referring to?
No. You guys will. I'll bring it back shortly.
Yeah, I don't think I caught it.
A little tease in there for something that I just caught this time around that I didn't catch the first time. But okay, let's move on to the hook.
Ah, yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
Here in the hook, we talk about themes, ideas, big ideas, small ideas. What is this book about? Which I think is a good question. Dan, you mentioned earlier the notion of the power of storytelling, right? Why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, and this is certainly not the first time that King has delved into that, right? I mean, On Writing is pretty much all about that. You could argue Wizard and Glass explores some of those similar themes, but I think here it's we get a story within a story. I mean, kind of two stories within a story in many ways, and I don't think he puts too fine a point on it, but to some extent, I feel like it helps him process the death of his mother or his role in the death of his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, you can make an argument that maybe there's not enough of a connection to that. I kind of like the amount that's in here. And also in many ways, I think he's showing the parallel between the two stories, right? Like on one hand, it's like, okay, he just tells these two stories because they're stopped, right? And
they're trapped.
In both cases, they're having to wait. So he tells them. But I do think they have parallels to each other. They both have shape-shifting. They both have a kind of suspicion of who's a hero and who's a villain. And they both have somewhat of a mystery that needs to be solved.
And there's a coming of age component to both.
Totally, yeah. And so I think that just plays into the bigger themes of the Dark Tower, like cause a wheel. But once again, I actually think it's storytelling in some ways is a form of therapy for Roland. We even saw that with Wizard and Glass. I mean, I think Wizard and Glass is him finally getting over Susan Delgado by telling that story and allowing them to move forward and processing that. I think this is finally coming to terms with the death of his mother. So yeah, I think that's what I mean by the power of having to tell a story so you can finish the story that you're currently telling, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know, there's like an inception level of a story within a story within a story.
Yeah,
there are three stories. The broader story of Roland the Quartet is almost irrelevant to the rest of what happens. But some of my favorite parts are when he speaks to the quartet at like a campfire, because they're so confused and they're like, what is happening? So when in book 4, when he tells them, you know, like, let's sit here and I'll tell you, I like that because they're plucked from New York City and now suddenly they're in this weird world. So when Roland actually takes the time to explain himself, you know, he's strong, silent type, but you can tell that they're like on every word. And so am I. I like hearing this stuff about, he refers to himself at one point as a baby gunslinger. And I'm always like, give me a baby pour of milk, or, you know, I use baby as like small, but so it's funny to hear a gunslinger refer to as like, no, we're baby gunslingers. It's like, you're a gunslinger, you're not, but he recognizes that he's a boy still and that people are not going to regard him quite the same.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to talk about. But yeah, there's this quote that I think is in line with what you guys are saying, where Roland says, mayhap I'll tell you too, since it's long until dawn and we can sleep tomorrow away if we like. These tales nest inside each other, yet the wind blows through both, which is a good thing. There's nothing like stories on a windy night when folks have a warm place in a cold world. And that's just a lovely sentiment. And I think that is the spirit that kind of pervades this book. I do think that there are resonant thematic ideas here, but I think ultimately King is less concerned with that than he is with the idea of the ways in which stories bring people together and the ways that they shape how we know each other and also shape how we see the world. There's also a line that really stuck with me that says, the stories we hear in childhood are the ones we remember all of our lives. And I wrote next to that in parentheticals, for better or worse. And I want to talk about that a little bit more as well. But yeah, this whole notion of like the power of storytelling, I feel like I was fed this idea a lot when I was in school and studying, and I got so sick of it. But I do think that there is value in recognizing the communal shared power of storytelling. But I think sometimes like writers can sound like totally full of shit when they start doing the whole like storytelling is what brings us together or whatever.
I see this in theater, especially modern
Oh,
theater.
100%.
Is that especially theater, because it's live storytelling, people will use that as their gimmick or their marketing tool or whatever else. And I'm not entirely against it, because there are times like Wind Through the Keyhole where that certainly he's telling the truth. That is what this book is about. But also he's telling a really good story within that. And that's kind of my issue, is that sometimes people think, oh, the power of storytelling, that's the story in and of itself. And no, that's not the story. Like, that's a theme. That's an idea. That doesn't just get you brownie points for doing
Right.
that and pointing that out.
100%.
You have to tell a good story. And King tells 3 very good stories here. And that's the difference with me. I think with King, I will always forgive him for even using some kind of cliche like that, because the man tells a good story.
It's his
Yeah.
whole, it's his brand. And that's his thing, is that he's always valued, I think, story over everything else, where his big criticisms of a lot of other modern, especially modern literary fiction, is because sometimes style will surpass substance, or even trends will surpass substance. And I think that he is, I think that is a sticking point for him. What were you going to say, Fleeger?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. No, but there is something of the the oral tradition, and I know it can get pretentious in theater, but they're locked in a they're barely surviving a storm. They're huddled around the fire. Historically, humans, that's what we do, is we tell stories around the fire, right? I heard somebody, this podcast I listen to, they call fire cowboy TV, but it is like you look into the flames and it's mesmerizing, right? There's some kind of value to huddling around and just hearing a story. And I think with the Stark blast happening, they can't go anywhere. It's like we have no choice but to sit here in each other's company. And what do we do past the time? They don't have a radio, it's no TV. Let's tell a story. And in King, in the afterword, he kind of, so I listened to the audiobook and I read the book, but he kind of hits on the value of storytelling. And I just think this is like a fun exploration for him to, tell a story within a story within a story. It's an Inception type.
Yeah, it's all nested, and I think each story helps the other story get resolved.
And I also think that this goes to what you were saying earlier, Fligger, which is the whole idea of the quartet and like what binds people together is a huge theme of the entire Dark Tower series. And I think one of the theses that King is putting forward is that it's these moments that really can bind people together. Like, obviously, the struggles, the battles, the fights, all those things are also unifying. The dependence on one another is obviously going to be unifying, but it's being vulnerable and opening up and and joining together in that sort of intellectual exercise of storytelling that I think is a vital component of it all. And there's something hokey when you say it out loud, but like I said, as much as I get sick of that notion when it's said by grad students, it is there's value in recognizing that power. And it is something that I think we lose somewhat, in just me sounding like an old man, it's something we don't have as much anymore because society is very much pushing us towards isolation these days rather than some sort of community. And I think we have to fight a bit more to find communal connection with people in this era. And I think whenever, and it's silly, but when we're at the bar or something and we're just telling stupid stories from our childhood, that kind of stuff does bind us closer together ultimately.
Yeah. And I think both of you guys are very good storytellers. You'll tell me about your weekend and I'm like, okay, these people know how to tell a story.
You are too, Fleeger.
Oh, thank you guys. Oh my God. Once upon a time.
It's so nice. It's the power of storytelling right here.
Yeah. Here we go, folks. But even thinking of the Watchmen, you guys have read that, the comic, there's the pirate ship story within the story. And it's the idea of these themes that are, even though they're completely different stories, but the themes kind of, you hear about the tiger and it ties into the Skin Man, but it also ties into Roland's current journey. And I think that's a very tricky, needle to thread to make all 3 stories kind of relevant to each other. Mm-hmm. Despite, I guess in this one, they're a little more similar than Watchmen, but nonetheless, he's the oral tradition. I know it sounds dumb to even say that, but people gravitate toward a narrative. And to tell a fable or a parable, we're oh no, I get that and I can apply it to my life. So I like that within the story there is the can we call it story 1, 2, 3? Does that make sense?
That's a good point.
Is that easier? Okay, so story 3 is more of the Wind Through the Keyhole.
Yeah, traditional.
My girlfriend was calling it the Wind Through the Bumhole. And I just have to get
Wind
that
Through
out
the
of my way. So
Keyhole.
The
she's like, "Went through the bum hole."
bum
You reading
hole.
that?
Love it, yeah.
But it does tie back in these lessons. And yeah, and just I love the quartet finding out more. They call him like he's tall, ugly, and silent. So
Mhm.
these moments where Roland actually opens up and gives some kind of access to these other people, it's very powerful. And I love that you see with like Jamie, Roland recognizes like, oh, Jamie notices things that I don't.
Mhm.
So in the process of telling his quartet, maybe they're noticing things that Roland doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the lesson he's learned, is that you have to count on others to maybe pick up the details that would just go over his head.
Yeah.
Which ties into the Dark Tower as a series, right? This idea that you can't be the lone gunman like Roland is. You have to rely on others for all that. Also too, I'm going to save that until we get to characters, because I have some thoughts on Roland and Jamie.
All right. Let's talk about what I think maybe I found most interesting, what I was most drawn to in this story. And that's sort of seeing Roland in this what now phase of his life, the post Meiji era. His innocence is gone. It's time to start being an adult. And the Skin Man story in particular is very much a story about those uneasy steps into adulthood. And Flieger, you mentioned this a couple times, like seeing baby Roland, baby gunslinger. And I know we talked about in our Wizard and Glass episode about how much that book is about the loss of innocence. And, Susan Delgado in that book represents, I think, an awakening, a sexual awakening, but also like a coming of age moment for Roland. And then losing her is really that like shattering of the, if you guys, I mean, innocence is probably the best word. And it's interesting that he wrote that book around the same time he wrote Hearts in Atlantis, which I know, Flieger, you were on that episode with me, I believe. And that story is similar. It's all the same. It's all about the loss of innocence. I think those were themes that he was really reckoning with at that time. And so, but what we don't often see is the immediate aftermath of a tragedy. And not only has Roland lost Susan, but he kills his mother. And that is kind of almost rushed through at the end of Wizard and Glass, and it's something we get details about. But I think King really uses this space to explore that and allow that moment, which was so pivotal in Roland's life and shaping him, to breathe a little bit more. And I think those were the moments that I found so interesting. Here's a couple quotes. I was still very young and very innocent about many things, in spite of all I'd been through. And he says to his father, I'm not sure I'm ready for another mission, father, let alone a quest. That line made me laugh. Just the idea of like differentiating mission and quest just feels like very, I don't know, video gamey. But I still found it moving and interesting, because that is, I think, that sets up where Roland's at, and seeing him so insecure, and he's still living in Court's shadow. You know what I mean? Like Court is in a hospital, or he's like being cared for because he's on the verge of death, and Roland is caring for him. And his father sort of ties it to his sort of self-flagellation, his self-punishment, and the guilt he feels over the death of his mother. So he's caring for Court more than he needs to. But the way that I read it more so is that he's still afraid to leave Court's shadow. He's still afraid to leave the master's shadow. Go ahead, Flieger.
Yeah, no, and I think you're absolutely right. And it's also the guilt of like he couldn't protect his mother, obviously killed her. But you're right. There's something about Court not leaving home, but maybe if he can protect Court, because he cares for him for 6 months.
Yeah.
Steven calls him out and he's like, he has nurses. Why are you here? But maybe him nurturing Court is something, another person who he severely damaged.
Yeah.
Maybe he can rescue his mother by taking care of Court, but it's
Yeah.
not going to work out for Roland.
Yeah. And I think those two things are really inextricably tied. And but then we see, so yeah, his father basically is like, you have to move on and you have to grow up, which it's like a lot of tough love, which I really think is interesting. And I like this quote here where they get into like it's basically his father saying, you have to get over what happened to your mother. He says, Roland, hear me very well. I know you felt betrayed by your lady mother. So did I. I know that part of you hated her. Part of me hated her too. But we both also loved her and love her still. You were poisoned by the toy you brought back from Meiji's, and you were tricked by the witch. One of those things alone might not have caused what happened, but the pink ball and the witch together, I. And then Roland says, Rhea, And then it says, I could feel tears stinging my eyes and I willed them back. I would not weep before my father, never again. And that's, I feel like him telling himself, I have to grow up. Yeah.
Literally, his Steven says to him, your mother turned you into a gun and then pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, Steven's tough love is he's telling him like it wasn't your fault, like you were manipulated. But Roland doesn't hear that until the end of the book when he gets the letter.
Yep.
But Steven kind of can see, all the bad things that happened to his mother. But in this weird tough love kind of way, he's telling Roland like it's not your fault. But I wish he would have stated it more obviously for Roland's sanity.
But yeah, and then he sends them to go do this Skin Man mission, which is, gives, I think, what is, and I love the Skin Man story, but it is very procedural in its way. But there's so much weight applied to it because of what King sets up for Roland, like what this means to him, which is that he needs to start, moving on, taking missions, doing what gunslingers do. And so, and I think that there are these really interesting moments where, like, when he has to tell Bill Streeter, the little boy, that his father's dead and he can't do it. Like he's too, and he looks, and there's this line where he says he looks towards the grown-ups to do it, like the sheriff to do it. And like he doesn't have that capacity yet. And that to me, and this is where I think we can talk more about this with Jamie later, but that's, I think it's so interesting to see Roland in this phase, because when he's in Maisie's with Cuthbert and Elaine, like he has so much confidence because he's young and reckless and he doesn't know what loss is yet. And so, and he's also madly in love. So he's got that going for him. And now in this new space, a lot of that confidence has been shaken, and he's, he's had these massive losses, and he lacks that confidence. And it's like really interesting to see him in such a vulnerable state, because I feel like he's more vulnerable in this story than he was even in Wizard and Glass.
Yeah, and just like comment on that, I read something else recently, but they were like, everyone prepares you for love, but no one prepares you for heartache and heartbreak. And that's, I think you see whether his mother's, he doesn't even know how to process emotions, let alone them being immediately taken away from you, right? So even by virtue of him telling the quartet, he's processing it himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think that there's like, when you're coming up with like screenplay templates, right? When you're telling sort of a basic story, the one thing that they say to do to humanize your main character is to either give him a love story or give him a kid that he takes care of. And it's interesting because I think like between this and Wizard and Glass, Roland kind of gets both of those. He gets Susan, he gets his love story, and then here he gets like that moment where he has to care for the child, because those are like two story templates that have pretty easy themes baked into them, whether it's coming of age or whether it's growing up in a lot of ways. And so like caring for a child is a great like shorthand to help your character grow. I mean, how many movies have we seen that in, where like some playboy hotshot suddenly has to care for a child, and then they become a real man or whatever.
What was the
love
black
something
and white
else.
one? Joaquin Phoenix. What was that, Randall? I know it's black and white. Joaquin takes care of like. It was a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was a Mike Mills movie.
I remember one time we talked about it at a bar, and I was like, I know you know this, but I can't.
I just forgot what it's called, but it was
not like there or something. It's
something like that. It was one word twice, but I don't remember.
I've never heard of this movie.
It was, I think it was nominated for at least one Oscar, but
is it like his nephew
wasn't like,
or something? I can't even remember. I just remember really liking it. I remember you liked it.
I liked it too, although it was kind of not beloved amongst like film people. It was, I think, a crowd pleaser. And
come on
performances.
Come on.
I've never heard
Von
of this
Bondi
movie.
song. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lovely, it's a Mike Mills movie. Like it's lovely. It's got a big heart to it, but it's not going to change your life. But but those kind of stories I think can be really powerful. So yeah, I don't know. I think that to me is maybe where I connected to this story most. How do you respond to this, Kath?
Something I was gonna ask you guys. I agree with everything you've said, and I agree that Roland is more vulnerable here even than he was in Wizard and Glass. But I also feel like he's not as heavy emotionally, which I like. Like there's a little bit more of, maybe it's because the mission is a little bit simpler than it is in Wizard and Glass. It's just, okay, we have to solve the mystery of this skin man and kill the guy pretty much. But I like that there's maybe a somewhat silly way to put it is I don't feel like Roland is quite as emo in this as he is in Wizard and Glass. And that's a tough trick to pull off because I do agree with what you said about vulnerability, but maybe it's because he's grown a little bit. So he's not letting the feelings weigh him down quite as much.
Well, that's the whole thing is he has to not let them weigh them down. Like
Yeah.
he knows what he needs to do, which is mature, and be the one who is in charge in times of distress rather than the person who is, retreating into his feelings. Like he has to care for this boy. He can't
No, totally.
be emo about it,
Well, and also too in Wizard and Glass, even though I love Roland in that and he's a good guy and it's great to see him fall in love and everything, he's being kind of stupid. I mean, he's being very careless in Wizard and Glass, and he is letting love trump everything else, which is not the best thing for his friends. It's not the best thing for the town. It's not the best thing for him. It's just, I mean, it ends up not being the best thing for Susan either, right? And so I think maybe he's learned something from that is, okay, I can't let my feelings get the best of me, which obviously curdles into something that doesn't benefit him in the future. He almost goes too far the other way and represses everything and ends up hurting his friends in that kind of way. So I like this kind of middle ground we're in here. And in a weird way, it almost feels like Roland at his most competent, even compared to what we see in the Dark Tower universe. And once again, fully recognizing that the mission is a lot simpler than saving an entire town or saving the world or the universe, which is the case in the Dark Tower book. But yeah, it's just a really nice, sweet middle ground to be at. And it's literally the middle of the series at this point.
Well, I think that dovetails with one of the last things I wanted to talk about in this section, which is that this does feel like this book feels in line with when I think about the grander context of what he was writing about at this time. Obviously, Colorado Kid and Joyland. Colorado Kid had come out a few years before. Joyland came out around the same time. Those are both crime books. And then he would go on in just a few years to write the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, which is sort of his full-throated embrace of the, I guess, like crime era of his career. And I guess I was just thinking, and I mentioned this earlier, but there is an aspect of the Skin Man stuff that very much feels like a Law and Order episode, like a procedural mystery that needs to be solved.
Sorry, you said that earlier, procedural, and I had not thought of that. And I'm like, Randall, no, you nailed it. It's literally like it's Batman. Batman's a detective and a scientist, but it's you get to see Roland literally solve a crime, a mystery, and that doesn't really exist in any of the other books. So I think procedural is a very good way of putting this book.
Yeah, and it follows a pretty standard path. I mean, it's interviewing witnesses. It's like looking for clues and then setting up a plan and having a big confrontation and big reveal. It's like all of these things are the sort of things you would see in a Law and Order episode, say, but what differentiates it obviously is, and this is what I was mentioning earlier, sort of the weight that is applied to what this means for him at this time of his life, but then also the really beautiful immersiveness of this world that King is so confident writing about. And, during a lot of those latter Dark Tower books, he wasn't really getting to live in this kind, like Midworld specifically. Like he was spending a lot of time in those Dark Tower books, like in Thunderclap, and then also traveling through wormholes and thinnies, and like you're in New York City, or you're in the Dixie Pig, you're in under like robotic layers where 9/11 is happening. So it's like it's fun to be back in the like world of the first few, or like the first book, or Wizard and Glass, where it's a lot about the smell of the flowers and the alkali in the air and the sand blowing everywhere. It's like all of those sorts of details. There is such like the King is like luxuriating, I think, in a lot of those details because he hasn't been able to spend time in that part of the world. This is one of the things I also loved about the Little Sisters of Illyria, is that it's set in a time where he is able to explore Midworld in a way that I think he wasn't able to in those last books, when there was so much plot.
You said like the stakes aren't that high,
right?
We know he's gonna come out okay. So it luxuriate is, again, it's Randall Randall with the word choice today. But
hey,
it gives you
English for a
words.
reason.
Yeah, hey, 10-cent word. No, but it gives you this chance to just let King explore this universe in a way that, I mean, like it's not going to alter the series, but I like to just go in this world. You know what I mean? Like I like living between book 1 and 7 and just finding out more and more. And it's, you know, we know he's going to survive. He's telling a story. There's a story within a story, but I like being in this world. And I love when Roland is opening up and processing it, as well as the quartet learning. But it's also like him kind of understanding himself as he tells it.
And what I love too, like, I think one of my favorite sections is just at the beginning when they meet the ferryman, the Bix, I think his name is, like just them engaging with a local and who is this character and talking about the world as it exists and allowing this conversation to happen that isn't loaded with, like, you know, when you're in Lud, even there's turmoil, there's tumult, there's like the TikTok man, there's like Gasher, everything is loaded, and here you just get to sort of like amble through and meet these characters, and there's still a threat of danger. Like I love just right at the beginning when Roland talks about seeing the people, you know, watching them over the hills that Eddie and Susanna don't see, and the guy's got like a tentacle hanging out of his mouth. Like there is that wastelands kind of vibe to it, but then you just get this sort of, you know, chat with a local townie who is so funny and so charming, and just to watch them engage in that low stakes way. And those are some of my favorite parts of Wolves of the Calla, as well as them kind of communing with that community. So it's nice to be able to see that aspect of it, because we don't really get any of that in books 6 and 7. Yeah, I don't know, but and I guess like it was easy for me. I don't think I tapped into it when I first read the book, but I think having read the Mr. Mercedes books and knowing where a lot of his interests lie in genre these days, it was very easy, I think, to spot the sort of like crime, you know, procedural influence in this story on this read, which I think is very much to its benefit. Any other hook ideas or things you guys want to talk about before we move on?
Can I say one? It's not really, I don't know if it's a motif necessarily, but upon the reread this time, like seriously looking at it, not just reading it for fun, but the theme of wind. You know, it's titular, but he talks about like when the wind starts whipping, the pant of the jean is whipping like a machine gun.
Yes, I love
and
that.
And they talk about like, you know, at the end he reads his mom's letter and kind of like lets it go to the wind. But and can I go on a little side tangent here? The Stark blast, and Randall, I don't know if you read Game of Thrones, but the Starks are a famous. Oh yeah, there you go. But you know the Starks are in Winterfell, right? It's a winterous, stormy place. Yeah. So to call it a Stark blast, I did wonder if there was a shout out to George R. R. Martin. And there's also the Ironwood, which
I wonder that too. I know he's a fan of the books.
So in the Telltale games, Game of Thrones, the foresters you follow, and they harvest ironwood. They did like a Walking Dead game.
Oh yeah, I played that studios.
Game. Yeah, it's you know, it's like a fast react. What do you call it? Fast time.
Oh, quick time
yes.
Events. Yeah.
But so I did wonder with like Ironwood and Stark play so much, and I wondered if this was like his little
nod to George
inside, nod to GRM, because like they've interacted
and
a
the
lot.
show had premiered by this point.
Oh yeah, and the books had come out, you know, forever ago.
One, and I think too, the Dark Tower series throughout its entirety is referencing other works of pop culture, with Harry Potter, with the Beatles. Are they friends I feel like they probably know each other.
I think they've done like a Q&A or something.
Yeah, there's a pretty famous interview between the two of them. Yeah, because George R. R. Martin asked King, he goes, "How do you fucking write so fast?"
Yeah, he's like, I don't. King's like, I don't write video games. I don't go to conferences. George, get with it.
Amazing. All right, let's do a quick little detour to structure and format.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
Okay, structure and format. I wanted to touch on this briefly. You know, sometimes we have a lot to talk about in this section. Sometimes we have nothing to talk about. But I will say I like that we have this section because it helps me notice the ways in which King does vary up his structure in his books often, and does things that he's never done before often. Like in this book specifically, this nesting doll structure, because we start with between books 4 and 5, like with our main characters. Then we go back in time to tell this story about the Skin Man. And then we go back in time again to tell an old fairy tale. And then we come back to the Skin Man. And then we come back to, the present day, if you want to call it that. And, that is a very elegant, I think, storytelling means. And it's not something that I've seen him really do before, where one story elegantly leads into the next and then elegantly leads into the next, brings us back, and it's a very much cause wheel kind of thing too, because there's a circular notion to the way that these stories unfold. And so to me, I think that is, I don't know, I just found it really lovely. And it's not like reading a story collection where each one is sort of cordoned off in its own thing. There is just this elegant backwards then forwards progression. I don't know. Did you guys notice any of that? Dan, I feel like you used that phrase nesting structure earlier.
Yeah, little I guess they're not, but babushka dolls is not the right term, right? It's nesting dolls,
No,
right? Russian nesting
Russian dolls, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and once again, I think it could have been confusing had he not just kind of used it as this breezy, like I'm trying to think of another novel where it does get, well, we brought up Watchmen before, right? As much as I love Watchmen, the works of Alan Moore sometimes, like if you read the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen comics, which I love, by the time he gets to the Black Dossier, which is I'm sure he's had other ones since then, but it was the last one I read. It gets a little confusing at some points. Same thing with like Thomas Pynchon and Gravity's Rainbow. There are lots of other authors who do the kind of story within the story thing within a story. And I feel like it just becomes a little too much to handle. King, I think, because it's all, I don't know, it's all so direct here. And they're each working within a very specific genre, right? The framing story, story one, is, I mean, I'd argue the Dark Tower is almost its own genre, right? Like it's the Dark Tower, it's the King universe. The second one, story two, the Skin Man, very much a straight Western. Even though it's in Midworld, it has elements of futurism. It's still a Western. Story three is very much a fairy tale and, working with that motif. And I think too, and it's funny, and not to keep ragging on the novel fairy tale, but the novel fairy tale is obviously working within those tropes too, of like the fantasy tropes. But fairy tale, it almost feels a little less calculated to its disadvantage. It's a little too freewheeling.
Yeah.
With the fairy tale element here, with Tim and everything like that, it's very much like evil stepfather, evil magician, hero or villain who becomes a hero, vice versa. It just seems like it's very aware of its own archetypes and just being so direct and straightforward with them, which makes it very easy to read and almost like fun when we get to like a new story that they're going to tell. So I feel like he's very much adhering to a specific structure and format here, but not so much where it's distracting from, okay, I'm going to tell like a very simple A, B, C story.
Yeah. Fleeger, any thoughts on structure and format?
No, I think Caffrey kind of nailed it. This book, if it was 400 pages, it'd be unwieldy. It opened up too much. I just checked. Sorry, I was reading different versions, but it's under 300 pages. If this was an 800-page novel, I think it would have been watered down.
Yeah,
King keeping it kind of concise here.
Fleet-footed.
I think it. It's very fleet-footed, and the inception of story within a story, the Russian babushka dolls, as you were saying, I love those things. Caffrey actually gave me robot babushka dolls once for my birthday.
Oh, that's right, yeah, of your birthday, which I meant not for this year.
Oh no, another birthday. No, but I do think like it's fun to see King confined to a 300-page novel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and it's like he's so good at. He writes these epics, but it's fun to sometimes get reminded that like, no, he can keep it short and sweet when he has to.
Hey, it also makes our job a little bit easier too.
Here's a question for you guys. Obviously all the stories are connected. Do you have, of the three, do you have one that's a favorite of yours or just one that you're enjoying the most?
I would say story two.
Same. Skin Man.
Yeah.
I think it's really well told. I think it's creepy. And I love like the dynamic between Roland and Jamie and the relationship with the boy. I think all of it's great. The fairy tale one for me, it took me a while to get into it. I'm not a big like fairy tale person in general. And so the whole kind of like once upon a time vibe has just never been my thing. But once the Covenant Man enters into it, it gets a lot more interesting and a lot more threatening. And then I was very much, I think, invested by that point. And then obviously I love the stuff set during the Stark Blast, because I just love spending time with those characters. Yeah.
I'd agree. I think that story 2, the Skin Man, is my favorite, just because it's the most Western, it's the most horrific, which are the two genres I like the best out of these. But yeah, I do like one. It's interesting too, because with the fairy tale, once we get into the Covenant Man and the tiger and even the alligators and everything else, it just starts to play with elements that I like a lot better. But also it starts to feel like it's almost like the Skin Man story is pulling from those elements. Like obviously with the shape shifting into a giant cat and the alligators, everything else. It's almost like, I brought this up the other day on a podcast, but it's kind of like Usual Suspects, where we're like, oh, we see where they're pulling from for all this, even though the Skin Man is a quest that actually happened. I like to, they feel further tethered together the closer we get toward the climax of it.
And I like too that this takes place in theory right after they went to Oz.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, good call.
So they talk about the Skin Man going into a lion, a tiger. There's like some of these thematic.
I actually didn't catch that. That's funny.
Oh wait, do we get a lion, a tiger, and a bear? They mention all three of them.
They mention a lion, tiger. I don't know if he goes into a bear, but
they mention that the Skin Man turns into a bear at one point.
Oh, hell
yeah. Because they're kind of debating. I mean, I feel like it can turn into almost any giant animal, right? Yeah.
Turn to a Shardik, man. That's what I say.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's head over to Heroes and Villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
All right, in Heroes and Villains, we talk about characters. There's not a ton here, and we've talked about Roland a lot, so I think unless you guys have more to say, we can probably, because I feel like a lot of the themes for me were revolving around the thrust of his character. But I do want to talk about Jamie. Kath, I feel like you had some thoughts here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it actually speaks to what I was saying about Roland before. I love that Jamie is just this kind of capable straight shooter middleman in many ways. I think if he had been a Cuthbert, or I guess he's most similar to Elaine maybe, but once again, we don't have that relationship that's already in place in the same way it is with those other two guys. And I enjoy that. I like that he's just this kind of like very competent companion piece to Roland. Did you guys feel that way?
Well, I because they talk about he's not potentially royal blood, but they're like Arthur the Eld also had 3 mistresses, but he kind of earned it through merit, right? So he's not psychic, he's not a cut up, but he's very aware. He's kind of the strong silent type. I hate to say it like that, but you know what I mean? Like he's no,
I think you're right. I think he's a perfect companion for this story because Cuthbert, there's a lot of baggage with Cuthbert,
and Eddie,
and it's like I think like I would love to see more. I think like there is some unexplored aspects of their relationship that I wish we could see, but I don't think he would have been right in this story because we didn't need someone who was going to prod Roland, in this story.
Exactly.
Like, we didn't want somebody who was going to needle him. And
but that's also what I think of, like with Roland being born high class. Jamie is not going, he understands the ceiling that's above him.
Right.
So he's not going to tell Roland what to do, but he respects him. But what's interesting, and Caffrey and I, we did the Dark Tower detour. We got into the comics. So in this, he has a birthmark, Jamie, on his hand. His hand is red. But in the comics, he has it on his face, like a wine stain, they call it. And it's inconsistent between the comics and the book. But you get the impression that this kid was like, maybe, class genius that was afraid to raise his hand.
Right.
And now that it's just him and Roland, I like that his other members of his quartet are not here because it gives Jamie a chance to shine. And, Jamie loses his virginity at the end of the book. And it's like Roland's like,
he certainly does.
But Roland also points out that there were things that Jamie noticed that he's like, oh man, why did I not notice that? And you're seeing Roland as a boy making mistakes and learning from those around him. And he's like, oh, if Alan or Cuthbert were here, they would tell me to. But I think Jamie is a good, like, I don't know. He kind of like fills in the cracks that Roland has.
Yeah.
And also too.
Go ahead, Captain.
Well, I was gonna say also too, if you just look at not revisionist westerns, but kind of more subversive westerns, which the Dark Tower certainly is. that's almost a trope in and of itself. The idea of the complicated main character with the trusty sidekick, strong silent type, like you guys said, is a good way to put it. It happens in all the Pretty Horses in the Border trilogy. It happens in the Open Range. It happens in The Way of the Gun. It happens with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. There's always like the main dude who's kind of got all this stuff going on, and then the foil who's just no pun intended, the straighter shooter. And I like that we get that here because once again, Elaine is the closest we get to that in the Dark Tower.
But he
series.
has the psychic element, which
exactly,
I think is almost cheating in a way.
Yeah.
So I think,
right. No, this almost feels like Cervantes though, like Don Quixote. Not that he's like, was it Sancho Panza? But
yeah,
he kind of is like, yeah, you're a little crazy, but I'm here to support you. And I think that's a great trope.
I know you probably haven't, Kath, because you're not really a gamer, but Flieger, have you played Disco Elysium?
Yeah, I'm playing it right now.
Oh, dude, I didn't know you were playing it right now. We have to talk about it. It's one of the best games I've ever played.
Hey, nerds, let's keep it about the dark. No, I'm kidding.
Well, no, but that game has so much fun with that archetype, like that dynamic. Like the main character that you play as is like a drop dead, like drunk alcoholic, and who is an absolute like fool, but you're like a detective and is always saying the wrong thing, and then you get like a sidekick who is very competent and very smart but has to support you, and there's like a more contentious relationship there than the one because your character is absolutely a fool in Disco Elysium. But when you were talking about that dynamic, I'm like, that's a great subversive example of that. Here they're more so like bouncing off each other, but I think like Jamie understands that Roland is in a bit of a insecure state, and so he has to step up a few times. But yeah, their dynamic to me in this is so good.
No, but I think from Roland observing Jamie, like Jamie is a quiet guy. He's not going to stand up to Roland, but Roland can kind of, it's almost like that mirror of like, he sees what's going on in Jamie's mind and he kind of starts to absorb. He's like, oh, well, Jamie is this and that. But then he starts to be like, oh, he's actually kind of skilled. And so I do like the evolution of Jamie in this story. Again, he really only exists mostly in the comic books. But which Randall actually let me borrow back in the day. But it's cool to kind of flesh him out. And again, like there were multiple times where Roland's like, why didn't I see that? And he's mad at himself, but thank God he had Jamie there.
Yeah. Another character I want to talk about is the Covenant Man from the story of like the third story, which is the more fairy tale one. Kath, who do you think the Covenant Man is?
Yeah. I'm guessing that the Covenant Man is Randall Flagg. Right?
Yes. King confirmed as much in the Dark Tower Companion, which was in an interview with Bev Vincent. And so, yeah, that was something that I wouldn't probably have picked up on if I were just reading, because it's never explicitly mentioned, but it is something that people, I think, theorized or extrapolated on, and then King confirmed it as much.
Still, we have Flagg is leading this kid down this path, right? And even though he does have somewhat of a happy ending in that he, frees his mom and him from his evil stepfather, do you have to question the motivations of that, right? Is that entirely noble? Is that still Flagg trying to corrupt both of them by being an accessory to a murder? And King never weighs in on it really, but I have to wonder about that.
Well, I like that. I mean, I think Flagg is best viewed as sort of a chaos agent, right? Like I think he definitely leans dark, but like, I think we've always kind of discussed him as a chaos agent, but then also almost like a henchman with like ambitions of grandeur, where he he always wants to usurp someone, but he'll work for, it's implied in The Stand that he's essentially working for Satan, and then it's, he's obviously working for the Crimson King in the who, hey, maybe is Satan in the Dark Tower books. And so, but he always has these kind of notions of, well, I will wait for my moment and then I will pounce. So I think that the version of the Covenant Man / Flagg in this reminds me almost of the version of Flagg we get in Gwendy's Button Box, where it doesn't really feel like the Flagg we know necessarily. And it's hard to parse the intentions, but if you look at it, I think it's most helpful to just look at it as this is someone who just loves to sow chaos and benefit themselves at the same time. Like, I think.
I was gonna say right now, because like I keep going to the procedural thing because I never thought of it to apply to this, but that is such a good analysis. But Flagg exists beyond this procedure, right? We don't know when he's being benevolent or evil. We actually don't know his grand schemes. he's like the Law and Order guy that comes in, like rips his sunglasses off and then leaves. We don't, it's like, did that help? Did that hurt? I don't think a mere mortal could comprehend, Flag or Covenant Man. So even it's like you do something, you're like, oh, you led this boy down a path, but it led to a good place. And
Yeah.
but did that just serve some grander purpose that maybe is worse in the long run?
Yeah, it might be.
It's also interesting because Roland is the one telling this story, and Roland knows who Randall Flagg is, obviously, right? But then you have to wonder, does Roland know that the Covenant Man is Randall Flagg? Yeah, because like Flagg is Roland's enemy, and you think he would comment on that in some kind of way, but he doesn't. So I'm led to believe that he doesn't know the Covenant Man is Flagg.
I don't think he does because they just saw Randall Flagg at the Wizard of Oz place. So
it would be funny if, like, while Roland is telling it, he like realizes, he's like, wait a minute.
But what's interesting is he's telling a story that his mom told him when he was a boy, which implies this immortality of Flag, that even in our fairy tales, Flag has some kind of weird presence there. So whether Roland connects the dots of the guy that, he Pavlarded with in the campfire, or, the Emerald City, he may not even, I don't think Roland knows Covenant Man is Flag necessarily. I guess it's kind of weird because in the book you kind of get some insight into Covenant Man that maybe wouldn't have happened with Roland's storytelling, but
oh, I know, right? I think it's like sometimes King does forget who's narrating the story.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, it's very, like, I think some of the best moments of the Skin Man one specifically are when Roland is sort of editorializing a little bit about, like, in retrospect. But yeah, there are times though where it's like, oh, suddenly now King is narrating, right? And that's fine. King has a habit. I mean, if you read any King book, there will inevitably be one section where a character is telling a story about something that had happened the previous day or something, and they are speaking it in dialogue as if it's being written by Stephen King and as prose in a novel, which is always very funny to me. But I think, sometimes the nested object, the inception of it all can make that narration a touch murky. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because I thought it was a fun little detail. It obviously doesn't really matter, I think, in the long run, and King's probably just having a little bit of fun with it. But I thought it was a neat detail. Any other characters you guys?
I feel fucked up now because of like the whole Merlin. Merlin. I always forget Merlin is not Martin, but
there's a lot of
but he also kind of is. Caffrey, don't blame yourself. There's a lot of convoluted.
Don't beat yourself up, Dan.
Fuck.
Dan, no, sit down.
Dan, stop! Put down the gun. Stop it. No.
Any other characters you guys want to discuss?
I was gonna say, do we need to discuss Tim? But not really. I feel like he's like a pretty. He's a pretty typical fairy tale boy. Little fairy tale boy.
He's just a little boy.
Yeah.
What about the Skin Man?
I was gonna say, so
Skin Man's cool.
One of my complaints though about the book, I love the Skin Man. The Skin Man's awesome. I wish he was someone a little bit more significant to the narrative, the reveal of him. Yeah. But then again, it's all brand new characters, so King would have to make the book a lot longer, I think, to plant too many red herrings. But I do like his abilities, and we'll talk about him in the cemetery. Genuinely scary too. I think there's some really freaky stuff with the Skin Man.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like Mystique or Morph, but only into animals. Caffrey, X-Men better than me, but it's this. I do wish, and isn't it? Can we just talk about it now too?
Yeah.
Because I think Randall and I, we did the Desperation Regulators episode. So it's something about what he saw in the mine, right?
Interesting. Like tack.
Are you connecting?
I think
tack
because they talk about like, oh, there's something there that is it's like a green aura or something.
Yes, I actually wrote this down in Cemetery. Let me read it.
I want to hear what you want to say. Oh, whenever you want to do it.
Well, I just want to say, they say the new plug's a lot deeper than the old ones, and everyone knows there are demons in the earth. Mayhap one of the miners struck on one, wakened it, and was done a mischief by it. I love that's I have that in Cemetery because I find it really spooky, but I do think that, there might, because I guess the way that I read that initially was, oh, that's just like lore. It probably has nothing to do with the actual Skin Man, but you're right. It might actually, I'm not saying it's like absolutely tack, but it might be some kind of like subterranean demon, that exists in those kind of places. I think the connection to Desperation is very interesting. Kath, any other characters?
God, I hate critics.
Johnny Merrillville cameo.
I don't think so. I mean, I guess we get Eddie and Susanna and everyone, but we don't really.
Well, no,
You
they're
know, we
not
should
really,
mention
yeah.
Oi. We get to see like some more Billy Bumblers. That's always a fun thing. But yeah, I don't know if the book necessarily elaborates too much on on Eddie on the Roland Corcott's hat. I think those are kind of all the ones that we need to cover.
Yeah, I think like Oi obviously does get a little bit of heft here because Billy Bumblers can sense the Stark Blast coming, and Oi has this kind of like he almost like sacrifices himself to the storm, you know, because he's trying to protect them in his way, and Jake has to run out and save him. Very thrilling sequence. But so yeah, I kind of I feel like King was really happy to spend a little extra time with Oi in this story.
You know what's
So,
funny is I can't remember which exact part it's referencing, but I know there's a line of like, "Oh, I feel like we're bringing them back just to kill them all over again." It's not. It's in reference to something else later on, but it's kind of like that with the Kot's head a little bit. Like we're bringing Oi back just to, but like when you think about it, Oi's return, be like, oh wait, no, Oi suffers such a grisly fate just a few books later.
I know.
Although it kind of maybe comes back as a, I know where we discussed the epilogue to the Dark Tower long ago, but yeah, it kind of comes back later. But yeah, just good to check in with all those guys again.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's move on to our next section. It is called Misery.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
Misery is where we talk about stuff that made us miserable, made us want to tie Stephen King to a bed and cut off his foot with an axe. But I didn't have any because I thought this book was really lovely. What do you guys think?
I've got one.
Okay, let's hear it.
I've got one. Merlin Martin Rand bullshit. Just call him what he is. Just call him the sorcerer or something. Let's stop confusing me. No, I didn't write down anything. I didn't write down anything in terms of like actual prose. I mean, this is always a thing for me with Dark Tower books. Every now and then, if they have a bunch of midworld words strung together, it get like, oh, like Cully Gully Dudum Chick, thanks, yeah. But there are a few sentences here and there. But at the same time, I have to meet the book on its own terms. It can just get a little bit gobbledygook. But as far as the sentences and the plot points and all that go, I mean, I really didn't have anything.
Yeah, there was nothing here that made me want to tear my eyes out, which was really nice.
I think it's a great, concise book. The only thing is when they read the letter from Roland's mother at the end, and he's like, the handwriting looks crazy. I have very poor penmanship. So I'm like, how dare you evaluate me?
My wife has terrible handwriting, and
really?
I call it Comic Sans handwriting.
Squiggle pen is what I write with, but he's like, oh, clearly this is written by a crazy person. I'm like, how dare you?
That's what I say whenever I read an email from one of you guys. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
shit! You guys are
damn, Randall.
Pretty good emailers. Yeah.
No,
I have like old professors that just like weren't good at email. Their emails sometimes would just not answer a question and be very infuriating. But everyone here has good emails.
That's right. I pride myself in my emails.
All right.
Speaking of good writing, let's move over to Word Processor of the Gods.
And we're going to make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
So in this section, we like to read writing we really liked, stuff that was really, I think, or not even just like sections, but I think like even turns of phrase or world building moments. Like I wanted to talk about this world building moment when Jamie and Roland are on the train to Debaria. And I really love, there's those moments where they say they know they've left Gilead because they see Farson supporters pointing at like doing the eye on their head, like doing the symbol for the Crimson King and the Farson supporters, and them sort of making that notion at the gunslingers on the train as they're leaving town. That to me was just like a really simple, really effective world building moment where I think people who are more unclear on what the Farson dynamic is, like I know that I was always like a little bit not fully clued in to what the entire like arc was there. And I know a lot of that stuff is expounded in the comics, but just that little moment really helped me get a sense of like, okay, this is what it's like in Gilead, outside Gilead, and the rebellion, if you want to call it that, of the Farson army is like encroaching. And that to me was just a really good bit of world building. What else did you guys have in this section?
I mean, this is something that's always a hallmark of the Dark Tower series for me. I feel like King actually writes action scenes really well.
Yeah.
Not just horror, but from a Western perspective. So I'll read really quick. This is when we're just hearing about what the Skin Man has done. And it's funny because this is right after a section that I'll also read in Cemetery. Our old gunfire shot, this is them trying to attack the Skin Man, and one of the pellets, or perhaps more than one, tore away some of the knobs and scales on its head. Black tarry stuff flew up. We saw it later on the cobbles and sanded it over without touching it for fear it might poison it right through our skin. The cherry thing dropped her, and I think it had almost made up its mind to come for me. So I pointed the gun at it. Though a gun like that can only be fired once, it must be recharged down its throat and with powder and shot. I told it to come on, told it I'd wait until it was good and close so the shot wouldn't spread. She hawked back and spat into the dust. It must have been a brain of some sort, even when it's out of its human shape, because it heard me and ran. Before I lost sight of it round the wall, it turned and looked at me as if marking me. Well, let it. I have no more shot for the gun and won't unless a traitor happens to have some, but I have this. Just really good piss and vinegar kind of dialogue. And just really clear descriptions of action. I don't think all horror writers are good at doing that. So, and there's a lot of that kind of thing throughout this. Just I love seeing King's Western gunfight action.
Yeah. How about you, Fligger?
There's only a couple, but they're mostly. I love when Roland is like a hard ass, and when he's the whole sequence of hypnotizing Bill, I think is great. And keep in mind, he did that with Susan this last time, but it's like look at the bullet and. But,
what did they call that? The bullet dance or something?
It's like rolling a quarter on your fingers. But he tells him at one point, he's like, a person is never too old for stories, Bill. We live for them. That's so King speaking to us.
Yeah.
But I also like at one point, Bill upsets Roland and he's like, I doubt Bill would know how to close his smile. Or I doubt Bill would know how close his smile brought him to suffering.
Yeah.
There's a moment of Roland's like, you're smiling? I'm about to kick your ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at one point too, someone's like, well, I don't know if I can talk to you. And then Roland's like, then you'll have a mouth still capable of speech when he gets back. Like these vague threats that Roland is like, and keep in mind, he's still like, he's 14 and a half, 15. Yeah. But he's so impatient. But I just like the interactions with him and Bill. Because it reminds me of like Shemi and like, he's trying to meet this boy where he's at, but there's still the impatience that Roland has. And again, him telling the story to his quartet in the current day, maybe Roland is realizing he needs to be a little more patient with people.
Yeah. I have, speaking of the action sequences, I had one from pretty early on with Jake and Oy and Roland with the Stark Blast. I just really love this section. I'm like, it's just really fun, exciting writing. Jake felt the temperature of the air around him plummet. A branch broke off with a dry snap, and he ducked as it whistled over his head. Oy never stirred until Jake snatched him up. Then the bumbler looked around wildly, baring his teeth. Bite if you have to, Jake said, but I won't put you down. Oy didn't bite, and Jake might not have felt it if he had. His face was numb. He turned back toward the meeting house, and the wind became a huge cold hand planted in the middle of his back. He began running again, aware that now he was doing so in absurd leaps, like an astronaut running on the surface of the moon in a science fiction movie. One leap, two, three. But on the third one, he didn't come down. He was blown straight forward with Oy cradled in his arms. There was a guttural, garumphing explosion as one of the old houses gave into the wind and went flying southeast in a hail of shrapnel. He saw a flight of stairs, the crude plank banister still attached, spinning up toward the racing clouds. Will be next, he thought, and then a hand, minus two fingers, but still strong, gripped him above the elbow. Roland turned him toward the door. For a moment, the issue was in doubt as the wind bullied them away from safety. Then Roland lunged forward into the doorway with his remaining fingers sinking deep into Jake's flesh. The pressure of the wind abruptly left them, and they both landed on their backs. I just love, like, it's so descriptive. It's so exciting. It's so fun. Like, it's terrifying to be out in like a crazy storm, you know, where the wind is not just like annoying or whatever, but genuinely dangerous. I've only experienced that maybe like twice in my life where I've been outside in it, and it is so scary.
Yeah,
also
we have
love.
I was gonna say we have the Arctic blast in Chicago that hit every few years.
Yeah.
And I remember having a sense of panic, which I've never felt in the cold. It's uncomfortable. It's not convenient, but there were times where I'm like, if I don't go inside, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, you could genuinely be hurt. Yeah.
I
That's
uh, I remember that first one we had when I was living in Chicago, which I think was 2010. I think that was the polar vortex.
Yeah.
That they called that one. I remember I was working at Groupon at the time, and Randall, you'll remember this. The first office we had was on Upper Wacker Drive, and so you had to kind of like walk down a hill down Wacker to get to the train. And I remember I stayed at work late that night. They made us come in, which was crazy. And I was leaving it, and the wind like blew me on my butt onto the sidewalk. It was like literally blowing me like I was in Wizard Moss or something. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
I'm just imagining you like
that.
flying down the street. Like
No, it was really like that. I had to like grab onto the sidewalk. It was very funny. But no, I was gonna say too, I always like reminders that we get when Roland has missing fingers. Because I always forget that. And I'm like, oh yeah, one of his hands, it's all mangled and everything. I always like getting that reminder. So yeah, good piece of writing.
Your story reminded me of being in downtown Chicago, probably around that time, and seeing a man in he had a top hat on, and the wind blew it off, and he was chasing it down the street.
Like being a Monopoly guy or something.
Yeah, Mr. Peanut.
It was just one of those things that you see in movies, but you never see in real life. And I remember laughing my ass off.
Top hat, his coattails flapping in the wind as he chases.
God, dying.
Monocle falling out. No, I was gonna say it's not in that. It's in story 2, but I do like just one last quote with the pain of the wind. But at one point they're like, the skin changer man, they're like, it's leaving. I think it was in pain. And Roland goes, good.
Yeah.
Like he wants that to suffer.
Hell yeah. No, yeah, I think there's a lot of good writing in this one. I just wrote down those, but I think this is overall like one of the better written books I've read from King in this era.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's very
agreed.
muscular prose, just really lean and like he knows what he's doing the entire time. Really good stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Let's pop on over to the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
All right, here in the cemetery, we talk about what spooked us, what creeped us out. I've got a handful of things here. I've read a couple. I mentioned a couple of them. I love the beginning with the people peeking over the hills at them. I mentioned that the man with the tentacle creeping out of his mouth. It reminded me of some of the more horrific passages from Book 7, The Dark Tower, and sort of and also the section in The Talisman where they ride the train through the wastelands. Which is so horrific. Like it's one of those that I didn't appreciate as much when I was a kid that I really appreciate now, because like they build up the kind of wasteland aspect of it, or the blasted land, whatever they call it in that book, so well. And then you don't really spend much time there. But then I realized, like when I reread it recently, you don't need that much time because the creatures and the horror of it is expressed so simply and so starkly that like I always remember that there's like a small body of water, but then they see something moving in it that is clearly so much larger. And the implication is that it goes so deep. And that to me was like so eerie. And then there's always like people peeking over the hills at them. And that's true in The Dark Tower as well. Like when I believe they're riding Blaine through. Those kind of creatures are so eerie. And so that was one that definitely stood out to me. How about you, Kev?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about this on the podcast, especially as I've read more horror from the 70s from other authors. Something that King is just so good at is describing creatures and giving you a clear idea what they look like. I think a lot of other authors, they get too up Lovecraft's ass and they want to lean into, I can't describe what this thing looks like, right? And I get that and I get the appeal of that. But I also love it when you can just describe a supernatural being with such clarity. There are a lot of paragraphs like this, but this is also from near that same section where the townspeople are recounting what their run-in with the Skin Man was like. It's on page 51 of the first edition. It was dusk, a fortnight and a day gone. She and another, Dolores, had come out to close the gate and draw water for the evening chores. Fortuna was the one with the bucket, and so she was the one who lived. As Dolores began to swing the gate closed, a creature knocked it wide, grabbed her, and bit her head from her shoulders with its long jaws. Fortuna said that she saw it well, for the peddler's moon had just risen full in the sky. Taller than a man it was, with scales instead of skin, and a long tail that dragged behind it on the ground. Yellow eyes with slitted dark pupils glowed in its flat head. Its mouth was a trap filled with teeth, each as long as a man's hand. They dripped with Dolores's blood as it dropped her still twitching body on the cobbles of the courtyard and ran on its stubby legs toward the well where Fortuna stood. Just really creepy stuff in general. Like you get like a head getting bit off.
Yeah.
You get the creature attacking these women, but also it's just really vividly described as far as like the alligator snout and like what the skin you get an idea of what the skin man looks like.
Yeah.
Impressionistic horror can be really creepy, but I also really like literal horror, and that almost feels like something you would read in Beowulf or something with Grendel attacking. And like I said, there are a lot of instances throughout this. We get a lot of creatures. We get King describing the slow mutants who have grown fur. We get him describing the dragon, which is also like when the dragon's head rises above the tree line and then goes back down, and we get a full idea of its height. Just a lot of really awesome monster business in this.
I love monster business.
Monster business.
I love monster mash.
I think similarly to what you were reading, I wrote down, because this is just nasty. Page 114. The thing had turned the bunkhouse into an abattoir. In the end, the butcher's bill came to 18. 16 Proddies, the cook, who had died beside his stove with his rent and bloodstained apron thrown over his face like a shroud, and Jefferson himself, who had been torn limbless. His severed head stared up at the rafters with a fearful grin that showed only his top teeth. The skin man had ripped the rancher's lower jaw right out of his mouth. Kellen Fry found it under a bunk. One of the men had tried to defend himself using a saddle, using it as a shield, but it had done him no good. The thing had torn it in half with its claws. The unfortunate cowboy was still holding onto the pommel with one hand. He had no face. The thing had eaten it off his skull. I love that kind of, Tales from the Crypt style, like nastiness. And like, it's not, it's like you said, Flieger, it's not cruel. It's almost funny with how disgusting it is, but it also very much conveys the brutality, I think, of the scene. But there's also a moment that it's a really visceral moment that reminded me of, it's very similar to something that happens in The Talisman. They talk about like when they're more describing the skin man as like a werewolf, which is kind of what you think it is at first. I love when like Roland asks, he's like, "Oh, was there a full moon?" And they're like I've heard that in myths, and they're just like, "No, it has nothing to do with that." But no, they talk about like somebody trying to run away and the claws of the beast like ripping open their back and like exposing their spine. And there's a moment like that in the big werewolf scene in The Talisman as well. Like that's almost word for word, but it is such a visceral, like upsetting image to me. Like the idea of having your back torn open by claws. And yeah, that one absolutely stood out to me. But
I also just because shapeshifting is such a piece of there, I feel like every culture has a shapeshifter, right? Like we see it in Native American lore, we see it in classic movie monsters. I like that we get kind of the King version of what a shapeshifter is in this.
Well, I mean, technically it is a shapeshifter as well.
Oh yeah, totally. And yeah, you brought up the the wolf. I'm not a huge fan of The Talisman, but I love the wolf sequence. It's so good. It's like easily the best part of the book, and we almost get like a novel length version of that here.
Yeah. Cool. Any other cemetery? Awesome. Let's satiate ourselves with a little bit of pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone in bad, Mama. Everything in the sin. Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven. He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
I try to get sultry with that little bit of pound cake.
Oh, it worked. It worked.
Thank you. You guys are horned up.
Horned up.
I'm gonna take my shirt off. Yeah.
Dan, I know you've got some here. Or Calf.
Let me. I have a few. Let's go one by one because I don't want to spoil any of your guys' pound cake. And
well,
you're the king of pound cake, Dan.
Yeah, I just wrote boobs down like 4 times in my notes, so then I just need you, and diddle stick, so I need you to just read them.
Yeah. Okay. So this is. I'm assuming they're referring to the Midworld version of a dildo here, but page 42. It's he's just talking about whores, as you do. Whores. It must be with the whores in the low town called a diddle stick. Does that help? Truly. And they use it on each other. So 'tis said, but much talk is just la la la. You know more of women than I do, Roland. I've never lain with one, but never mind. Given time, I suppose I will. Tell me what you're about in Debar. This is just like mention of, and they mention later on how they prefer the diddle. I wrote down long stick and fiddle stick, but I do think it's diddle stick.
Well, I think they probably say both.
Yeah, and
I think long stick is perhaps a type of diddle stick.
Yeah, the women prefer that to
Plus
the real
size.
thing sometime in
Yeah.
in there. So yeah, that was a funny one, but yeah,
It's like that Incredible Hulk dildo I had to write up at Groupon.
Oh, the Incredible Hunk.
The Incredible
Groupon.
Hunk.
That was also a Groupon, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You didn't sign an NDA, right? We're not getting in trouble.
I don't think so. I don't think I'm in trouble for that one.
Yeah.
You guys are selling Hulk Fist?
Oh, God,
basically,
Jesus.
yeah.
It's just those Hulk gloves. Those like cool Hulk gloves you get at Toys R Us. So you can use it for
Hulk hands.
Yeah, but I got some more too, but I'll let you guys take a turn.
Well, what do you have, Fleeger?
I only have two because I knew Caffrey would cover our ass here. I like when they talk about the woman having big breasts that could each shade a baby.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that
one I wrote
like
down.
maternal. I like that. It's nothing wrong with that.
I mean,
but also
how deep in his career? He's like 30 years into his career, and he's still finding new ways to talk about how large breasts are.
Right.
I got to give him credit for that.
Well, he also talks about whores' vaginas as sugar purse.
Love it. You can tell he was published in like men's magazines for all of his early
Penthouse
career.
too, right?
Yeah, because he I feel like he's perhaps borrowed a few of those phrases.
I feel like I always get the men's magazines he was in. I can't tell which were real titles and which were ones I'm making up. Like there's Cavalier, Adam, but then I'll always say like, oh yeah, Swank and Stroke. And
I think Swank was real. I don't know about Stroke.
Real? Probably not. Yeah.
Paint.
Paint.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. No,
Paint for Mr. Show. Sorry.
I thought you said paint. I was like, what the fuck?
There's also on 43. Speaking of breasts, he says, or they're talking more about he spends a lot of time talking about sex workers here. They may call to you or make promises. They may even show you their titties as they know you. This is what's funny to me. As they know, a young man can't take his eyes off such. Like he needs to qualify it. Like he could just say, they may even call to you, make promises. They may even show you their titties. But I just love how he says, as they know, a young man can't take his eyes off such. Like, young man love their titties.
My favorite fake porno name I've ever seen in something was also Mr. Show, but it was like it wasn't on the show itself. It was in like a live show they did that they had on the DVD. But they had a fake porno mag called Jug Fucklers. Just the unnecessary L absolutely kills me. Yeah. So, anyways, Dan Caffrey, what else do you have for Pound Cake?
I can't find it, what page it was on, but I know he described something at some point as boogery hot, and I thought that was just really, really foul.
That's a kingy phrase, yeah.
Yeah, he loves his boogers. Yeah, and I had written down the shade, the big enough to shade a baby from the sun.
Keep in mind, Caffrey has 19 pages, not double spaced, of just words of Pound Cake here.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Find your best ones, Dan.
No, what's weird though is they're all kind of in here, at least they're all in this like 10 to 15 page stretch. I don't know if they.
Well, yeah, because there's not a lot of women in this book otherwise. Yeah. So I feel like he's got to cram it in when they're at the all women temple.
But can I say one thing that I like is they refer to Roland as his mother's last name.
Interesting.
I noticed that.
That's good.
Because it's like because he was what's the name of the place that his mom was at? It's like the Serenity.
Oh yeah, Serenity. Like the kind of
so they refer
house.
to him as his mother's maiden name, which is a subtle thing, but they imply that no, we respect you because of your mom, not your dad.
Yeah. When we interviewed Glenn Mazzara, who had created the Amazon Dark Tower series that didn't get picked up, he said that Gabrielle's time at Serenity was actually going to be a pretty big part of the show.
Really?
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, like during that first season in Meji's, it's probably Mayhees or something, and I'm sounding like such a white person, but whatever. We probably said Mayhees on the episode. I just didn't think about it that much this time. So all I'm saying is I think it would cut back and forth between those scenes, what was going on with Steven in Gilead, and then also with the mother in Serenity. So he was really trying to broaden that world, and I think bring some of the stuff from the comics and from Wind Through the Keyhole into that narrative, which I think would have been really neat.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Well, it's interesting too because the the first edition, the Cemetery Dance one. The drawing of the front is by Jay Lee, who did the comics. I think when they did the adaptation of this, drew that. So I feel like it's very tied to the comic. I still need to watch that pilot, the Glenn Mazzara one. I hear it's awesome.
Well, I mean, technically we
don't
don't have it, so
technically.
So let's move on to our next section, King's Dominion.
There's another world out there. I know there is.
Here in King's Dominion, we talk about how this story ties to the larger King universe, specifically with little Easter eggs and things like that. I've got a handful here. We mentioned it earlier, the hypnotism. I thought of the scene with Susan, obviously, but I also thought of the hypnotism of Tom Cullen.
Yeah.
Stan, which I think served very similar purposes, where this is someone who they couldn't get to talk outside of hypnotism, and they sort of needed to get them into that state to access something in their mind and like access, see what else was buried in there. And I thought that was, I think it's like something King falls back on occasionally, but it's always pretty effective the way he writes it. So I dig that. What else do you guys have? How about you, Flieger?
So I mentioned earlier, but the Ironwood, when Roland fights Court chooses an ironwood staff. When he kills David, he bashes the ironwood against his face. So now we're getting to see the farmers of the ironwood. This one, and this maybe a little more Dark Tower detour. I've mentioned this a few times, but directions with King matter. And Roland says I like the wind. It reminds me of older times. But as they're getting into the shelter, the birds are flying northeast, and they're like, oh, they're going to go die. Whereas the winds are blowing southwest. And again, that's toward Maine to Hemingford home. Southwest is a good direction. People that go northeast have a bad time. So the birds flying northeast and dying goes to my theory of directions being important in this universe.
Interesting. That's really neat. Kath, what do you got?
It's always hard for me to find King's Dominion in Dark Tower books just because it's all King's Dominion, like everything is connected. We've talked a lot about similarities between the Talisman, other Dark Tower books, of course, The Stand. So I found something really nitty gritty. It's page 289. We get the old chambray work shirt.
Yes.
It says, he was slight for a miner, almost bookish, but his arms were slabbed with muscle, and I could see more muscle lifting his shoulders of his chambray work shirt. So, and that's not even Roland wearing it either. That's just everyone. So yeah, that was one that I found. And like you said too, just the nesting structure of the story. I mean, we get that in the Colorado Kid, we get that in From a Buick 8. I feel like King is doing that a lot in his narratives around this era, even Lisi's story too.
Yeah.
Can I say one?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Sorry, Randall. Go. No. Let's yours if we got them.
I was just going to say, I've got some Kings or some room 237s, as we like to call them. There's some 19s in here that I noticed. I think I spotted 2 19s, and
I get tired of the 19s.
I know at this point I'm kind of over it.
Yeah.
It's like when, I always say, when I watched the Boogeyman movie and the house had 19 on the address, and I'm like, yeah, I fucking get it.
Yeah, come on, let's keep going. Yeah, exactly.
Just throw Cujo in there too while you're at it. So I got some room 237s on page 209, or what is it? Yeah, 203. His lips, Tim saw, were as red as a woman's when she paints them with fresh matter.
A little
rose matter. No, rose matter.
Oh, matter. Oh, I thought you meant matter, fresh matter.
MADDER. Although, hey, let's throw gray matter in there too. Although gray lipstick would be a little bit of a different vibe than, the pink. So on page 107, he has a character's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. And I felt betrayed.
The Adam's apple.
But I felt betrayed because there was no monkey on a stick.
No monkey stick, man. A diddle stick? It bobbed up and down like a whore fucking a diddle stick or something, or a fiddly stick.
Like a whore on a diddle stick. That I need to, anytime I can bring this up, I bring it up. I don't care how off topic it is. But I think one of the funniest lines I have ever heard in a TV show ever, and this is related, was in a show called Year of the Rabbit that came out about 4 years ago with Matt Berry. It's a BBC show, and it's about detectives in the Victorian era. Very funny, but there is a line where Matt Berry is talking about having sex with another man, and he goes, I was bouncing up, and he's doing it in his Matt Berry voice. He's like, I was bouncing up on top of him like a fiddler's elbow. And that to me was
Fiddler's elbow.
one of the funniest descriptions I've ever heard. And or he said my ass was bouncing like a fiddler's elbow. And that to me is just it's God tier like writing. And so and then obviously with Matt Berry saying it. I just had to bring that up. So yeah.
Can I list a couple more?
Yeah,
so
I've got a few more too, but
Merlin discusses the Red King trapped in a tower.
Oh yeah, I caught that too.
Like, he doesn't understand. But one other one is kind of outside, but Aslan is the lion from the land of endless snows. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said Asland.
I thought you said that too.
How do you say it? Aslan?
Aslan. I was in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I should know.
No, I remember I saw it. You were very good.
Did you play
Aslan?
No, I played a beaver.
Sorry, my pronunciation is terrible. But I think that's a fun reference. Aslan. Yeah, Aslan. Sorry. I'm from Long Island.
I'm from Assland. Goddamn, that's funny. Assland sounds like a porno. Like Boob Man Goes to Assland or something.
I was thinking B.A. Billy Gunn. Is it B.A. Billy Gunn? The theme song is the "I'm an ass man."
Oh yeah,
right.
I'm an ass man. Like I just love that. That was the Attitude Era of WWE in a nutshell. Was that there was a guy that like his whole gimmick was that he has a great ass, and he just Mr. Ass after a while.
No, his teammate introduced his ass every match.
I was trying to remember just now when you said it. I'm like, no, he didn't like women's asses. That was Val Venus. That was more of his thing. And now with this, I'm like, yeah, it was just like ass. That was like his theme. It was just
ass.
Yeah.
Like there was really no thrust to it. It was just ass. His gimmick was ass.
Weren't him and Jesse James, the Road Dog, need to be
the Road Dog, Jesse James, the badass Billy Gunn, the New Age Outlaw?
No, I don't think they were ever meant to be lovers.
Wait, who were they lovers?
No, they love lovers all. That's the thing, Caffrey. All the women in the audience get to see what a real man looks like.
Yeah,
yeah, the ass man.
I would say the WWE was. I think still too homophobic to put in that era to have like two popular wrestlers like potentially be in a romantic relationship. If they did toy with those kind of storylines, but it was always through the lens of like, oh no, how embarrassing, you know?
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, I was deep in that era, but yeah. Thank you for humoring our tangents. I did not expect us to talk about Linkin Park or Billy Gunn's ass on this episode, but we're leaving it in because that's what makes this podcast special. Okay. There's a mention of a character named McVries, which is such a unique name that I can't help but recall that is the name of a major character in Richard Bachman's The Long Walk. So I can never, I think King's got like certain names that just bounce around his head that he uses now and again.
There's a lot of Duchamps you see, and it's funny. It's always like, oh, is he related to Teddy Duchamp? I'm like, no, I think it's just a common name around,
especially in Maine.
They're French names usually. I think they're common to Maine.
Yeah. And then the tiger is always spelled with a Y, and that reminded me of Here There Be Tigers, which was an old 1968 King short story that I believe is in Skeleton Crew. Yeah. And the tiger is spelled with a Y in that story. So that's that's a little Room 237, but thought it was interesting.
I wonder if he gets that from because isn't Tiger Burning Bright the poem, which I know King likes, isn't it spelled like a Y in that? It could be wrong.
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't read poetry.
Tiger.
That's for wimpy boys.
William Blake. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a fucking wuss who reads dumb poetry. No, it's the Tiger, which is Tyger by William Blake, and I always remember that because there's an episode of Batman the Animated Series that references that poem.
Oh, nice. Do you think the tiger? Do you think the tiger in the bathroom and Here There Be Tigers was Assland the tiger?
Aslan. I'm so sorry I said that.
He's gonna
funny.
He's gonna bite your ass. He's gonna bite your ass when you sit in the toilet.
Sorry, I sold him out for Turkish Delight. I can't.
Were you doing that voice, Flieger, because you were quoting Arnold Schwarzenegger when he's in Rio, that iconic video?
The weird thing is I just watched that Netflix Arnold thing, Randall. And I've been subconsciously being like, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I've been dropping it into that.
I love that.
I know the video you're talking about, but
what does he say? He says like, oh, the people of Brazil and I have a common appreciation of the ass.
Yeah, he's
the ass.
Well, they they say in America, like the Brazilian woman's talking to Arnold. This is from the 70s before he was like really famous and he was more of a bodybuilding guy and he did like travel videos and stuff. And he's
So
in
funny.
Brazil at Rio in Rio, like for the what do they call it? I can't or carnival, yeah. And
Carnival,
so
yeah.
yeah, and this woman's like, you know, in America, women love or men love breasts, but in Brazil, the ass is like what everybody likes. And Arnold like gets really worked up. He's like, yeah, I agree with the Brazilian point of view. And then later, like his narration, he's like, they do this dance that emphasizes the Brazil's favorite body part, the ass.
I remember his translator. He's like tracing her lips with his fingers.
Oh,
It's so creepy.
He is so
so
like you need to take a
gross, yeah.
hose to him in that video. He's so horny. It's hilarious.
My favorite Arnold video, and also too, real quick, looking up. So William Blake wrote The Tiger, which is that poem. William Blake also made the paintings that get referenced in Red Dragon, which I know King is a huge fan of.
Oh, interesting.
But no, my favorite Arnold video is, I think it was for Cigar Magazine or something, because he was always on that too, because he loves cigars. And they interview him and this is after he's famous. I think it's in the 90s, and he was still married to Maria Shriver. But we know how that turned out. But yeah, they're interviewing him outside his trailer about like smoking his cigars, and he says something. They say something like, "Oh, do you smoke your cigars in the house?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll tell you why." He's like, I smoke in the house because who introduced me to cigars? Maria's father. She loves her father. She does anything she says. I get away with smoking the cigar in the house. You know why? Because I'm a stud. And he's just like, I'm paraphrasing it, but it's so funny. Like
I'm a stud.
And he says something to the reporter about like, yeah, I can get away with this and you can't. It's
I know this is off topic too, but on Arnold, Bill Hader does the best impression. He was like a PA in a movie that Arnold was in. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get your hair and makeup guys. And he goes, find them, show me your leadership capabilities.
That is iconic. All right, let's move on to our last section, our final thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Final thoughts, we talk about our final thoughts on anything, which can also mean Arnold Schwarzenegger. So our final thoughts on Arnold. I'm just kidding. Okay, we're going to share our Bright Red Pennywise Clown Nose rankings as well as our MVP of this story. And so, and then also, like, I'd love it if you would say where this book slots in your ranking of Dark Towers books, and, you know, where it surpasses and which ones that it could never surpass. Caffrey, I'm going to start with you.
Wow, I wasn't prepared to do the rankings, but I will do that.
You can just riff on it. You don't have to do a full ranking.
Yeah, riff on it. Yeah, do a little ranking right off the top of my head. Love this book. I'm going to go ahead and give it 4.5 Bright Red Pennywise Clown Noses, which on Goodreads, you can't do 0.5, so I'll round up, give it a 5. And for everything we've said already, I just love seeing King get to have some fun. As much as I love the Seventh Dark Tower book, you do have to get through that afterward, and you do have to see him being in defensive mode. And I totally get it because of the way the fandom was at the time, and still is in many ways. But here it almost feels like he's just getting run around the track a little bit and give us a good Western and a good fairy tale, which are genres that he's tried to do in other books to not quite as much success. So I love that here. I love that it's genuinely creepy. Sometimes in the Dark Tower books, I feel like when we get to the cemetery, we don't have a lot to describe because it's so bogged down in the action or the lore or everything else. But here it's like, no, we get a good fairy tale, we get a great Western, and we get some really creepy horror. I think Jamie DeCurry is the perfect sideman for this. I almost feel like this could be its own like standalone movie or something like that. So 4.5. As far, and once again, I know it is a cliche to talk about the power of storytelling, but he does get away with doing that, and he shows us the power of storytelling because once again, he tells an actually good story here. Okay, so rankings really quick. All right. I'm going to go. Number 1 is still Dark Tower 7. Number 2 would probably be Drawing of the Three for me. Were you guys laughing at her? Yes,
like, no, shaking his head.
No.
Like, because what? Because I have 7.
He's trashing you.
He's trashing. Actually, no. Dark Tower 7, Wizard and Glass, Drawing of the Three. I would maybe put Wind Through the Keyhole right in the middle at number 4 after that. And then following that, maybe like probably Wolves of the Kala, then The Wasteland, then the first Dark Tower book, and then Song of Susanna. Did I miss any of them? I think that's
No,
all.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, right in the middle for me. And in a series that I quite like.
Who's your MVP?
MVP, the Skin Man.
Yeah.
Even though his identity is not interesting at all to me, I'm like, okay, he's just like some fucking
he's just some
salt
guy,
worker dude, salt mine guy. But I just love it as far as King's monsters go. One of the best King monsters he's ever read, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, he's my MVP.
Nice. Love to hear it. Flieger.
Oh man, final reviews, right?
Yep.
It's hard to rank this. I would do like 4, 2, 3, 5, and then this. The other one, I don't know. That's a hard question. It's like ask me tomorrow and I'll have a different answer. But I do think this is a great addition, and I love that even King is like slot this on your bookshelf between 4.5. Like I like that he understands that his audience loves these series, but it kind of gives like a little, Uncle Stevie advice, and it's like, this is 4.5.
Yeah.
I would love for him to revisit this. And I think I keep harping on it, but Randall, when you said procedural, like I never really thought of it like that. But this is, you get to see Roland the detective, or at least in his storytelling, right? You get to see this problem solving that I don't know exists in the rest of it, because he has to rely on his quartet. But this is a young Roland with a understudy solving problems. I love it. I hope he revisits this again. I would give this 4.5 bright red Pennywise noses, and I would give Tim as my MVP because he's the hero.
He's a good boy.
Good boy. And Assland, yeah.
Assland. I'm an Assland.
I love what you Assland.
I love what when Arnold lands in Brazil, he says, "I'm in Assland." No,
I'm in Assland.
I like you calling him an understudy, Flieger. That feels very accurate. Yeah. What if we did get like a Kolchak the Night Stalker type show, but it's just Roland and Jamie solving supernatural mysteries in Midworld? What if we got that before like an actual good Dark Tower series? It's just like using this character for one-offs like that.
I don't know, Randall, what do you think about it?
About this book?
About Assland.
What are your closing thoughts on Assland?
Yeah, I give it 4 out of 5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. I really love it. I don't know if I'd go full 4.5 or 5, mainly just because it takes me a minute to really get into the fairy tale portion of it. But I mean, it's a pretty minor complaint. I really like this book, and I think that it's probably the best approach he could have taken out of the millions of possibilities he could have done to revisit the Dark Tower world. And it's been interesting. I think we've been theorizing. I know that when we did Gwendy's final task, I theorized extensively about what that book could mean for the future of the Dark Tower, and especially in conjunction with Fairy Tale, which we hadn't read yet. I was proven wrong, but I am very, very interested to see if there will be another Dark Tower book like this. And I think if there is one, that's probably the best approach, is to do a more procedural style kind of story about Roland's past. I think we're done, honestly, with Eddie and Susanna and all of them. But I think that there are many stories that you could tell about Roland's years as a gunslinger that could be contained and streamlined in the way that this one is, because it really benefits from that. I mean, I think like just saying things are too long can be a very reductive critique sometimes, but because sometimes long stuff really does earn the length, and I'd say that's true for a lot of longer King novels. It is a great example, but there are definitely King novels where I'm like, Jesus Christ, like you could have like this would have been so much more powerful like with 300 less pages, But that said, when he, like they said in that Guardian review, like when he does do these shorter stories, they almost always really tend to hit strong. I mean, look at like The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, like a great story, and it's like nice and tight. It really works. And then his short stories, are obviously always been a favorite. So he really does work well in that mode. And yeah, so I don't know. I have a lot of affection for this book, and I hope we get something more akin to it. Although I'm not sure. I mean, who knows how many books we have left out of King, and I'm not sure if he'd want to revisit this if he hasn't since this. My MVP, I would say, is the left breast that could shade a small child. of that woman. No, I'm just kidding. I'll give it to Jamie. I love Jamie DeCurry. I think he's a great character and a nice addition. I know in the Dark Tower pilot I mentioned earlier, Jamie is actually with they actually worked it so that Jamie is joining them on their way to Mahis or Mejis. So they actually make Jamie kind of a deeper part of the quartet, which is, I think, a cool choice. One I would have wanted to see played out. And then I guess my rankings, like it's hard for me to say though. I just know Wizard and Glasses my number one. I'd probably put that's a good question. Number two, man, like I'd probably say The Wastelands, honestly, which I really like, and I'm kind of in the minority on that. And then maybe Drawing of the Three, and then I might put this book, like I think I'd put this book above Wolves. No, I mean I think I'd put The Dark Tower above it. So then I would say The Dark Tower, the last book, and then like Wolves, Susanna, first book would all be below Wind Through the Keyhole, I think, for me. So yeah, right in the middle. I think we're all kind of there where it's like right in the middle, and it really does benefit from not having the baggage of the rest of the series attached to it. And yeah, so I guess that's my review and our review. And this was so fun. I love talking about this book. And what's up next? We got Joyland coming up, and then Revival. There might be one in between that, but Revival is coming up, and I'm so excited to do that book. That is made for me in a lab, that one. Yeah. So any plugs, like what's going on in Halloweenies, Calf?
Oh man, so when's this episode dropping and what would be on Halloween?
I have no idea.
I don't fucking know. I don't know. No, I
don't
think
know.
Jared Leto. I don't know. I believe Aliens 3. I think Alien 3 will be out, I think, by the time this episode drops. I'm not on that episode, but I know they're recording it very soon.
Well, what do you think about Alien 3?
I love Alien 3. I mean, it's flawed for sure, but arguably the most interesting Alien movie. I think there's still a perfect cut out there to be had between the assembly cut that got released, like David Fincher's vision, and what came out in theaters. I think there's still not that quite sweet spot that has been reached to make it a perfect movie. I don't love the CGI in it, but there's some story-wise, I really like where it goes. I like it thematically. I like that it gets back to this kind of stripped down back to basics approach. But yeah, big fan of Alien 3. We just did trying to think.
Did you guys do session 9?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Duh. We did. I led that episode. I should know. We did a session 9 episode. I was gonna say Secret Window commentary, but that was a Losers Club. Yeah, we did a session 9 episode. That was a ton of fun. So that's definitely going to be out by the time this drops. So going over, check it out, and we will continue our Alien coverage throughout the year.
Hell yeah! Where can people find you, Fligger?
Assland, I guess.
Assland.
No, but Dan Fleer at socials. But I would plug me and Caffrey do Dark Tower Detour. We'd love to have you on episode, Randall, because you're so good on this. But we just did the S tier ranking of the baddies, ne'er-do-wells, and villains, and it was really fun. So
yeah, it's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, you can check that out in our Patreon, patreon.com/thebarons. We've got hundreds and hundreds of hours of content. I mentioned it earlier, or no, maybe it was off mic, but we've been doing a new series on the Patreon lately where we read through King's old Entertainment Weekly columns from the 2000s. And those episodes have been so fun because, man, it's like, what a time capsule. And he was a lot looser with his tongue back then in terms of his media critiques and stuff, which I think he's a little softer these days. Which makes sense. I don't say that in a negative way. But yeah, it was fun when he had that kind of bully pulpit at EW, the way he would lay into stuff, and really fun to discuss that. So we've got that amongst a million other things: Dark Tower Detour, the archive series, and Jen's Character Corner, as well as commentaries, Lobstrosities, and other things that I'm probably forgetting. And reviews. We have like full book episodes. I feel like I don't plug this enough. We have full book episodes for later Fairy Tale, Billy Summers, and I feel like I might be forgetting one. All the later books. Oh, and Gwendy's Final Task. Stuff like that.
Do we have one for the Institute? I'm not sure.
No, that's like literally.
Me and Randall did a baby episode on that.
We did a baby
right when he came out, but not.
Yeah, we're gonna do a full up on that when we get to it in the reread. So yeah, so those are all available in the Patreon as well. So check that out. And let's sign off, fellas. Long days and pleasant nights. Bye, everyone.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
This is the end of our show. For now. Tune in next week. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.